Chapter 435. It's very dark inside, though. Yin Shishir was a little afraid of the dark. Yin Tianyu smiled. What are you afraid of, mommy? You have me, don't you? This is an adult attraction, are you really not afraid? In order to cater to the youths, Fairy Tale Valley also had attractions for them. Among them, the haunted house was the most popular, but because it was geared toward the youths, its terror index was quite high. Children above the age of 5 and below the age of 10 had to be accompanied by their parents to participate. Yin Tianyu was not afraid, though. He was the one who came up with a few segments of this attraction. What was there to be afraid of? It was all fake. I'm not afraid, I'll protect mommy. Okay. Yin Shishir naturally let him be. She turned to ask Jianghu, do you guys want to play? No, our Xianxian is afraid of the dark and ghosts. You guys should play. I'll wait for you outside. Jianghu smiled helplessly. Okay. You guys can go to other attractions to play, too. It's fine. I'm tired, too. I'll bring Xianxian to the rest area for a while. Jianghu said as she carried Xianxian away. Xianxian was obviously unwilling to leave. She waved her hands at Yin Tianyu reluctantly. Only after Jianghu threatened her a few times did the little loli obediently stop moving. Finally, Yin Tianyu was satisfied. His motive for choosing the haunted house was to get rid of this annoying brat. He was just enjoying some alone time with his mommy when this brat appeared out of nowhere and kept sticking to him. Yin Tianyu was very depressed. The queue was very long. Even if it was the VIP passage, there were still quite a few people lining up. The haunted house was a reincarnation game. Only 15 visitors could enter at a time. After 10 minutes of free walking, the staff inside would lead them to the exit. While waiting, Yin Tianyu's peripheral vision caught the attention of a giant panda behind him. Among the crowd, a child was carrying a giant panda, which was particularly eye-catching. The panda was huge, about 1.5 meters long. The child's height was shorter than it, so he was blocked from sight by it. Hence, from afar, he saw the panda's adorable face facing him. Its black eyes were playful and adorable. Yin Tianyu exclaimed in surprise. Was this not the panda plushie that his mother wanted to win for him earlier? Who would have thought that it would fall into someone else's hands so soon after he left? Yin Tianyu stared at the panda for a while more before turning his head away. Xiao Yichen, who was hiding behind the giant panda, let out a long sigh of relief. His heart, which had been hanging high in the air, finally calmed down. It was quite nerve-wracking. Xiao Yichen was extremely conflicted. She had chased him all the way here, but she didn't know how to give this gift to him. Hence, when he saw him enter the haunted house, he joined the queue behind him. However, when he saw Yin Tianyu turn around to stare at the panda, his heart thundered. Just as she was struggling internally, Yin Tianyu turned back to look at the panda's adorable face. It was obvious that he was quite fond of it. Hence, he walked toward Xiao Yichen. Xiao Yichen thought he was going somewhere, so he looked back in the direction he came from, but he didn't see anything. When he turned around, he saw that Yin Tianyu had actually stopped in front of him. From his vantage point, he could see a pair of British-style sneakers. Chapter 436. Xiao Yichen was so stunned that he found it hard to breathe. This was the first time in their lives that the two little lads were so close to each other. They were only separated by a plushie. As the plushie was blocking Xiao Yichen's face, Yin Tianyu could not see his face. Judging from his height, he was probably older than him. Did your daddy win this panda for you? Xiao Yichen shyly buried his face in the plushie when he heard this. His muffled voice traveled through the plushie. No, this is. I won this. Is it that balloon shooting game? Yin Tianyu was a little surprised. Yes. Yin Tianyu's face broke into a smile. Wow. That's awesome. Inwardly, however, he thought, how is that possible? Even adults find it hard to clear that game. How can a child of his age complete it? On second thought, though, the advanced mathematics papers he usually did had stumped the top students in high school. It was not surprising. What's your score? Yun Tianyu was a little curious about this child's standard. Xiao Yichen answered, 109 balloons, which cost more than 1,000 points. Yun Tianyu was speechless. 109 balloons in a minute, what a joke. He doubted the authenticity of this score. If this child really won, then he could not help but wonder if the difficulty of this game was too low. Yun Tianyu asked again, do you like this toy? As one of the shareholders of Fairy Tale Valley, it was necessary for him to be concerned about the visitor's experience. Xiao Yichen's voice was a little muffled. I don't like it, eh? Then, why did you? I won it for my younger brother. Xiao Yichen's usually cold and arrogant face blushed shyly. His voice was also timid, seemingly a little embarrassed. Because my younger brother likes it, I won it and wanted to give it to him. For some reason, Xiao Yichen's somewhat wooden way of expressing himself made Yun Tianyu's heart skip a beat. His lips curled into an approving smile. You're such a good brother. I hope you'll have fun here. With that, Yun Tianyu returned to his team. Xiao Yichen cautiously poked his head out from behind the giant panda. Looking at Yun Tianyu's back, he felt a little impulsive. He wanted to rush forward and give his younger brother, whom he had never met but could only appear in his dreams, a big hug. However, he did not dare to do so. What if his younger brother did not like him? What if his younger brother ignored him when he talked to him? Xiao Yichen's heart to struggle to decide. Yun Tianyu to play to Yun's to be to him. Mommy, didn't you play that balloon shooting game last time? You wanted to win the panda plushie for me, but it was already won by someone else. Yun Tianyu raised his head and asked. Chapter 437. The panda in the crowd was particularly eye-catching. Its chubby face was adorably adorable as it stood among the crowd. At a closer look, it was as if the doll had come alive and was queuing up to enter the haunted house. Upon closer inspection, this panda was actually being carried by a child. It was just that this panda was too big. It was 1.5 meters tall and completely covered the child behind it. Yun Shishir commented, I wonder who's so good to actually clear this game. Yes, Yun Tianyu suddenly said happily. Mommy, it's our turn. The staff started to check the tickets, starting from Yun Shishir to Xiao Yichen. There were exactly 15 people in total. However, when it was Xiao Yichen's turn, the staff stopped him when she saw that he was carrying a panda and seemed to be alone. Little friend, where are your parents? If you're a child, you have to be accompanied by your parents before you can play. Xiao Yichen's face peeked out from behind the doll and said innocently, my mommy and brother have already gone in. Seeing that he and the child who had just entered the haunted house were twins, the staff did not think much of it and reminded him, okay, but you must hurry up and not fall behind. Thank you, Auntie. Auntie, the staff's eyes twitched. She was clearly still a high school student, all right? Xiao Yichen did not care about her ugly expression and hurried into the haunted house with the panda in his arms. The staff suddenly reacted and chased after him to ask, oh, right. Little friend, do you want me to keep the doll in your hands for you? As soon as she finished speaking, she had already disappeared into the entrance. This haunted house was designed with the theme of Japanese horror as its theme. Most of the Japanese horror houses had a unique style and oriental colors. Unlike those that relied on special effects and gore to create a scary atmosphere, Japanese horror mostly made use of people's fear of the unknown to create hair-raising images and sound effects to destroy people's willpower. Pulling open the curtain at the entrance and walking in, one would feel as if they had stepped into a dark and unknown world. This haunted house was designed as an abandoned hospital building. Its appearance was dilapidated and desolate, making one's heart tremble. There was no fixed route inside. Visitors were allowed to walk freely inside. This kind of design allowed the visitors to truly feel the terror of being in close proximity, and the design inside the haunted house was very realistic as well. The constantly flickering dim yellow light, the rusty chains, the rather aged and cracked walls, and the white bedsheet stained with blood, no matter what detail it was enough to make one's heart palpitate. While he was queuing, he took a look at the theme of the haunted house. This abandoned hospital used to be a huge private hospital with an excellent medical team and top-notch medical equipment. But later on, the director colluded with some underground black market organizations to sell fresh human organs. They injected people who were supposed to be healthy with sleeping drugs and even dissected them for experiments. Later, when the truth came to light, the director was taken away for investigation, and the hospital closed down. Gradually, it was abandoned, but the rumors of a haunted house slowly spread. Chapter 438. Xiao Yichen pursed his lips tightly. When this batch of 15 visitors stepped into the haunted house, most of them had already dispersed. He tried his best to keep up with Yun Shishir and Yun Tianyu, who were walking in front, based on the sound alone. He was a little afraid of the dark, especially in such an environment. It was inevitable that he would feel a little flustered. Hence, the little guy could not help hugging the panda tighter, as if this could ward off some of his fear. Yun Shishir and Yun Tianyu walked in front. As the haunted house was very dim, and Yun Shishir was also a little afraid of the dark, she walked very slowly. Yun Tianyu walked beside her with a calm look on his face. It was not because of anything else but because this haunted house was in its operational stage. He was among the first batch of people to try it out. He was very clear about the mode, the traps, and even the staff who would suddenly appear and pretend to be ghosts to scare people. Hence, the route he took with Yun Shishir was relatively safer. There were fewer traps, but there were not many people pretending to be ghosts. Along the way, there were no staff members pretending to be ghosts to block their way. Gradually, Yun Shishir relaxed a little. Xiao Yichen followed closely behind them. He was so afraid that he did not look at the creepy props. He thought that this haunted house was just for scaring people, but he did not expect the props and scenery to be so realistic. Even though he knew that these were all fake, under such circumstances, it was still quite immersive. Xiao Yichen quickened his pace. When he was about a few meters away from Yun Shishir and Yu Yu, he could vaguely hear the two talking and laughing. "Mommy, are you scared?" "No, I'm not. Don't I have Yu Yu to protect me?" Yun Shishir's tone was relaxed. She then lowered her head and asked him, "Yu Yu, are you scared? What's there to be scared of?" Yu Yu chuckled in his heart as he held on to Yun Shishir's hand and walked into a pharmacy. There were many glassware in the small room, and there were many organs soaked in formalin. The props were very lifelike, which was really creepy. Not only was Yun Tianyu unafraid, he even scrutinized each and every one of them. Most of the time, before entering a haunted house, the visitors would be eager to give it a try, wondering how scary it would be. However, once they entered the haunted house, they were all focused on running toward the exit. They had no time to look at the scary scenery inside the haunted house. As a result, many haunted houses had very crude sets. However, the haunted houses in Fairy Tale Valley had very detailed decorations, and they strived for realism. Due to the high terror factor, the haunted house was equipped with many first aid stations. Once you reached the first aid station, there would be workers to lead you out of the haunted house. Xiao Yichen watched them tour the pharmacy from afar. Suddenly, he heard a series of quick footsteps behind him. His senses were very sharp, whether it was his vision or his hearing. Coupled with his high vigilance, he couldn't help but stop in his tracks and frown. In the silence, the sound of footsteps was very clear. Xiao Yichen threw the panda on the ground and hid in a corner. He saw a man slowly walking to his previous position. His attire was dark, as if he was trying to hide it from others. He was wearing a cap, so it was impossible to see his face clearly. Xiao Yichen sized him up carefully and saw that his hand was still clasped around his waist. Chapter 439. His eyesight was very sharp in the dark, so he could tell at once that the bulging silhouette was a gun. From its silhouette, he could tell that it was a desert eagle. It was very powerful and had a strong penetrating power. A gun? Why would this person have a gun? How did he pass the security check with such a terrifying weapon of mass destruction? Before Xiao Yichen could be surprised, he saw the man kick the panda aside and walk forward. He slowly stood up and suddenly thought of Yun Shishir and Yun Tianyu. Knowing that something was wrong, he cautiously followed the man. Inside the pharmacy, Yun Tianyu was not aware of the approaching danger. Instead, he was studying the props in the glassware with great interest. Yun Shishir watched from the side with trepidation. She felt that such a haunted house was not for a child of Yun Tianyu's age. What worried her more was that Yun Tianyu did not seem to be afraid at all. Instead, he seemed to be curious about the setting. She was a little regretful and worried that it would negatively affect the child's mentality. Yu, let's go. It's a little spooky here. Yu raised his head and saw Yun Shishir's uncomfortable expression. He immediately said, okay. As the two walked out of the pharmacy, Yun Tianyu heard footsteps approaching. At first, he thought that it was a staff member in a costume trying to scare them. However, when the person came closer, he saw that it was an unfamiliar man wearing a cap. He was dressed in low-key attire, but his entire body was emitting a chilling murderous aura. This was especially so for the pair of eyes under the cap. When he raised his head slightly, his eyes revealed a sharp and frightening glint. Yun Tianyu was slightly startled and became vigilant. This was because he remembered that he was not among the visitors queuing to enter. He was not a visitor. Yun Tianyu subconsciously stood in front of Yun Shishir and stared fixedly at the man. He saw the man's hand on his waist move and take out a black object. Due to the dim lighting, Yun Tianyu had a slight case of night blindness, so it was difficult for him to distinguish things in the dark. However, Yun Shishir, who was behind him, clearly saw that the black thing was a pistol. She sucked in a breath of cold air as a terrifying chill rose from her heart. She immediately pulled Yun Tianyu behind her and took a step back while shielding him. Her actions were cautious as if the man before her was a scourge that would devour them all if she made a move. You. Who are you? What do you want? She asked cautiously. She did not know the man's identity, so she did not dare to act rashly. The man did not answer her question. Instead, he coldly raised his wrist and pointed the dark and eerie muzzle at them. Yun Shishir turned pale with fright. She immediately turned around and shielded the boy in her arms. Be careful. A child's shrill scream came from behind. The man turned around alertly and saw a child running toward him. Xiao Yichen carried the panda and kicked off the wall. Using the momentum, he leaped into the air and landed a beautiful roundhouse kick on the man's face. Chapter 440. The man staggered a few steps back from this sudden attack. Xiao Yichen leaped forward like a nimble leopard and tried to snatch the desert eagle from the man's hand. The man, however, seemed to be a well-trained assassin. Hence, he was highly skilled. He swiftly kicked Xiao Yichen in the chest, and the latter fell to the ground, caught off guard. Yun Shishir cried out in alarm when she saw this. The man got up from the ground, raised his hand, and pulled the trigger at Xiao Yichen. Bang! A silenced gunshot rang out, but little Yichen had already rolled to the side the moment he pulled the trigger. He hugged the panda at the side. The man pulled out another gun and fired at him repeatedly. Bang! 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 The enclosed space was instantly filled with the smell of gunpowder. He dodged nimbly, and with the cover of the plushie, he was not injured. However, when he looked at the panda plushie, it was already riddled with holes. That was the present he had won for Yu, yet he, Xiao Yichen, narrowed his eyes in anger and quickly pulled out a dagger from his sleeve. Whenever he went out, he would always carry a weapon with him for self-defense. Fairy Tale Valley's security was strict, but it was only for adults. Luckily for him, the dagger finally came in handy. He quickly threw the dagger at the man. The man tried to evade it, but the space inside the haunted house was too small. His neck was still cut by the flying dagger. Due to his large movement, he accidentally knocked into the prop cabinet. With a loud bang, the cabinet toppled backward. Xiao Yichen took advantage of his distraction to run toward Yun Shishir. He grabbed Yun Shishir's hand and told her, "Run. His target is you guys." Yin Shishir was scared out of her wits. She did not care why the child was here or what was going on as she ran after Xiao Yichen. When they reached a fork in the road, Xiao Yichen pulled Yun Tianyu along the right path. Yun Tianyu looked back, but his mommy was nowhere to be seen. It was too dark and she must have taken the wrong path. Mommy. Yu was anxious and wanted to go back to look for her. Xiao Yichen grabbed his arm tightly. Don't go. Go away. I want to find my mommy. In his desperation, Yu flung his hand away. He was worried about his mommy's safety and could not care less. Xiao Yichen angrily stomped his feet and chased after him. However, when they turned the corner, they bumped into the man who was chasing after them. Yun was startled, while Xiao Yu. This man's target was Yun Tianyu. Xiao Yichen immediately grabbed Yun Tianyu's arm and ran. As he ran, he said, "Don't worry, your mommy will be fine. His target is you. He's here to kill you, do you understand?" Yun Tianyu's eyes widened in shock. He was clearly in disbelief. The man's footsteps followed closely behind him. Xiao Yichen anxiously looked back, only to see the man raise his wrist and aim at Yun Tianyu's back. He was about to pull the trigger. Xiao Yichen knew that something was wrong. He immediately pounced on Yun Tianyu and pinned him to the ground. Chapter 441. Bang! The bullet pierced through the air and flew past his hair, shattering the glassware on the cabinet beside him. Not far from them was an ambulance. A few staff members rushed over when they heard the commotion. Xiao Yichen seemed to have grasped at a life-saving straw as he shouted, "Uncle, uncle, someone's trying to kill us. Someone's trying to kill us." The few staff members did not take his words to heart. In the haunted house, most of the frightened visitors would shout for help like this. In fact, they were all frightened by the ghosts. Hence, they walked over and said with a smile, "Kids, don't be afraid. Uncle will bring you out." Halfway through their conversation, they saw that behind the two little munchkins, the man had yet to put away his gun. The cold muzzle of the gun was emitting a wisp of smoke. Murder. Murder. Before he could finish his words, a bullet pierced through his throat. Blood splattered on the wall. The pungent smell of blood permeated the air instantly. In the blink of an eye, the man's body fell limply to the ground, turning into a cold corpse. The other staff member was completely frightened and screamed, "Help! Help!" At this moment, a group of visitors was walking toward the exit. When they heard the gunshot and saw the corpse on the ground, a commotion broke out. "Murder! Someone's trying to kill us! Help!" Ear-piercing screams were incessant. The scene was chaotic and the crowd lost control. Using the cover, Xiao Yichen got up from the ground with Yu and groped for the exit. Yu's mind was in a mess. On one hand, he was worried about his mother's safety. On the other hand, he wanted to know the background of this man and why he wanted to kill him. For a moment, his thoughts were in a mess. Xiao Yichen pulled him along as he groped around the haunted house. With the crowd inside, he did not know where the exit was, so he did not know where it was. When he turned back to look at Yun Tianyu, he saw him clutching his chest and breathing heavily. His physical fitness was not good. Excessive running would only deplete his energy and cause breathing difficulties. "Are you okay?" Xiao Yichen looked at him worriedly. Yun Tianyu was panting heavily. His small hand clutched his chest tightly as his face contorted in pain. His left hand fumbled in his trouser pocket and finally found a bottle of medicine. He swallowed the medicine, and his brows relaxed a little. Xiao Yichen could not care less. He gritted his teeth and carried him on his back. Yu's heart skipped a beat. "You, don't speak, it's more important to conserve your energy." Xiao Yichen said this as he looked around. Yun Tianyu took out his phone to check the route. Closing his eyes slightly, every escape route on the haunted house's blueprint appeared clearly in his mind. He slowly said, "I know the way. Go straight ahead and turn left at the end." "Are you sure?" Little Yichen was a little skeptical. Trust me. Okay, I. Following Yu Yu's direction, Xiao Yichen carried him and dashed toward the exit. Yu Yu had a strong sense of direction. Even in the dark, he could tell which way would lead him to the exit with the help of the dim light. Chapter 442. Xiao Yichen carried him on his back with nimble steps. His physical strength was considered outstanding even among teenagers, let alone children of his age. Soon, they successfully escaped from the haunted house. Outside the haunted house, the crowd was in a mess. Amidst the chaos, Xiao Yichen vaguely saw a man hiding in the crowd, searching for them. Alarmed, he ran in the opposite direction. The man turned his gaze and quickly spotted Xiao Yichen and Yin Tianyu in the crowd. He followed their footsteps and followed them closely. Yin Tianyu quickly recovered and struggled to get down from Xiao Yichen's back. Xiao Yichen held his hand tightly. Seeing the Ferris wheel not far away, he had an idea. Let's go. In front of the Ferris wheel, there were 2 long queues. With 2 VIP tickets, Xiao Yichen successfully passed through the VIP passage and boarded the Ferris wheel with Yin Tianyu. The Ferris wheel slowly rose. Xiao Yichen carefully looked down through the window. With his excellent eyesight, he spotted the man standing among the crowd looking up. He was shocked. This man was not simple. He did not lose them in such an environment and still managed to catch up with them. Was his tracking ability that good? In contrast to Xiao Yichen's panic, Yin Tianyu calmly sat in his seat and dialed Li Hanlan's number. He requested for a security team to pick them up at the Ferris wheel within 5 minutes. After hanging up the phone, he leaned against a corner. His face was expressionless. Little Yichen turned around and saw that the man's complexion was terrible. His lips were pale and he looked extremely weak. After the intense chase earlier, Xiao Yichen knew that Yu Yu must be exhausted, but more than that, he thought that he had not experienced such a thrilling scene before. Hence, he thought that he was scared out of his wits, so he walked over and held his shoulders. With a slight smile, he said, "Don't be afraid, I'll protect you." He was a little nervous and worried that his younger brother would not accept him. You want to protect me?" Yu Yu looked up, but he evaded the man's intimacy and avoided his touch. He didn't seem to be moved by his closeness. Instead, he maintained a distance. It was extremely unfamiliar. Xiao Yichen's outstretched hand slowly clenched into a fist. In the end, he withdrew his hands somewhat hesitantly. Her fingertips still felt the warmth of his body. It was so warm and real. Xiao Yichen clutched his wrist in a daze. He felt that his younger brother wasn't as approachable as he had imagined. "How are you going to protect me?" Yu Yu questioned coldly. Clearly, he felt that the child standing in front of him was so weak. He did not believe that the child could protect him. "I'm stronger and taller than you. I can definitely protect you," Xiao Yichen said stubbornly. Yu Yu looked up slightly. His gaze was cold and indifferent. He did not seem to accept Xiao Yichen's closeness, and there was a faint sense of alienation on his face. He looked at Xiao Yichen. Even though he was sitting in his seat, Xiao Yichen was much taller than him when he stood in front of him. He was tall enough for Xiao Yichen to raise his head and look up at him. Xiao Yichen was eager to prove that he had the ability to protect his younger brother. However, when his words reached Yu Yu's ears, they had a different meaning. Was this child mocking him for being shorter than him? Chapter 443. You're obviously showing off to me that you're taller than me. I'm not. You're not smart enough, so you're using your height to make up for it? Yu Yu frowned unhappily. Xiao Yichen panicked and tried to explain himself. "I'm not mocking you for being short. Don't misunderstand. Also, I'm not stupid." "You're not stupid?" Yu Yu's lips suddenly curled into a mocking smile. "Then tell me, how much is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6? Give me an answer in 5 seconds. Xiao Yichen had no time to protest. He quickly stretched out his chubby little hands and started counting with his fingers. He looked serious and was racing against time. "Time's up." What's your answer? 20. Little Ichen's head spun as he did the math. He hated it the most. 21. Idiot. Don't call me an idiot, little Ichen pouted. His confidence had been smashed to smithereens, and he felt aggrieved. The little brother he tried his best to protect had such a vicious mouth. Moreover, he didn't seem to like him. But he really liked this little brother of his. He was different from the cold and arrogant attitude he had with other people. Standing in front of Yu, he was more like a helpless older brother who had never tried to coax anyone. However, the way he looked at Yu was gentle. The expression on his face was anxious and uneasy because he had been misunderstood. You caused me to be separated from Mommy. I don't want to talk to you. Yu was anxious when he thought about how Mommy was missing and didn't know what was going on. Hence, he turned his head and ignored him. I'm sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. I didn't know she was your mommy. She's your mommy too. You didn't know? Yu glanced at him coldly from the corner of his eyes. His thin lips parted slightly as he said, Mu Chen, she's your biological mommy. Remember this well. She is my biological mommy? Xiao Yichen was a little confused. Initially, he knew that Yun Tianyu was his biological younger brother because blood relations could not lie. How could there be a child in this world who looked so similar to him, or even almost exactly the same? The same blood flowed in his veins. Therefore, he had an inexplicable telepathic connection with his younger brother. It had been there for as long as he could remember. He would often have a dream. In the dream, a child with the same face as him was walking far ahead while he chased after him with all his might. There seemed to be no end to the road, and no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't catch up with him. Gradually, as he grew up, he would often feel an inexplicable palpitation, or even heartache. Sometimes, his breathing would suddenly become hurried, and he would faint on the ground without any warning. Regarding his symptoms, the specialists were at a loss. After a series of examinations, they all said that his body was very healthy and did not have any illness or hidden illness. Not a clue. However, these symptoms did not stop there. They would often flare up without warning. As he grew up, his soul seemed to be able to enter that child's body in his dreams. Be it joy, anger, sorrow, or even illness, he could feel it as if it were his own body. He gradually understood that this was probably the shackles hidden in his bloodline. Chapter 444. Hence, when he first saw Yun Tianyu, he did not even question his identity and was certain that he was his younger brother. This was because the feeling this child gave him was exactly the same as in his dream. What he did not know, though, was that his biological mother was Yun Shishir. His first reaction was that Yun Shishir was Yun Tianyu's foster mother. Hence, he naturally assumed that Yun Tianyu was unaware of his real identity and had been kept in the dark all this while. Hence, he was very surprised by Yun Tianyu's words. I have a mommy, he reminded him softly. Brother, my mommy is also your mommy. Mu Chen, I only have one mommy. Yun Tianyu frowned. Although he knew that Mu Yaja had not mentioned who his biological mother was to Xiao Yichen, he was still dissatisfied with his brother's inability to differentiate right from wrong and acknowledge a thief as his mother behavior. Yes. She's your adoptive mother, but I can see that she treats you well. How do you say that idiom? He tried hard to recall and suddenly smacked his head. Yes. I remember now. Treat her as one's own. The corner of Yu's eyes twitched violently as he angrily said, You can't differentiate right from wrong, shut up. You're so fierce. Xiao Yichen was also a little angry. Can you not be so fierce to me? I'm your brother. That's because you don't even acknowledge your biological mother. Why should I acknowledge you? Yun Tianyu was angry at his ignorance and did not want to bother with him as he coldly retorted. He was like a summer insect that could not be compared to ice. All right, don't be angry. Xiao Yichen somewhat clumsily coaxed him. Now is not the time to bicker. Let's look for mommy together later. Yu frowned but did not say anything in the end. What's your name? Yu raised his head. His eyes flickered before he finally answered reluctantly, Yun Tianyu. Yun Tianyu? How do you write it? Xiao Yichen curiously grabbed his palm. Yun Tianyu wanted to retract his hand in shock, but he realized that Mu Yichen was too strong. No matter how hard he tried, he could not break free from his grip. Xiao Yichen didn't see the resistance in his eyes at all. He only wanted to learn how to write his name, so he wrote the character, Yun, on his palm stroke by stroke. His eyes were dark and bright as he looked at him. Is it this cloud? Yes. What about Tian? Xiao Yichen wrote the word Tian again. Is it written like this? Yes. Yun Tianyu gradually lost his patience. How could this fellow be so stupid that he could not even recognize words? The last word. Xiao Yichen wrote the word again on his palm and frowned. Is it this again? Yun Tianyu furrowed his brows in displeasure. It's the bless in bless. How do you write it? Yun Tianyu was so infuriated by him that he almost lost his temper. He coldly spat out, idiot, stop talking. Being together with him was dragging down his IQ. Xiao Yichen then took out his phone and searched for how to write the word. Yun Tianyu suddenly saw the watch on his wrist. Frowning, he grabbed his wrist. Where did you get this watch? My daddy gave it to me for my birthday. Xiao Yichen answered. Looking at the smartwatch on Yu Yu's wrist, he asked curiously, who gave it to you? Chapter 445. My mommy gave it to me as a birthday present. Yun Tianyu suddenly thought of something. Are your watch's GPS and Bluetooth functions turned on? Yes. Turn it off, he ordered at once. What's wrong? Don't ask so many questions, turn it off first. With that, he turned off his watch's Bluetooth and GPS functions. Xiao Yichen did not know why he made such a request, but he did as he was told. Yun Tianyu suddenly felt that something was amiss. What was even stranger was that the Ferris wheel, which was supposed to run for 5 minutes, did not stop even after 10 minutes had passed. It had already spun for so long, and it showed no signs of stopping. Was it malfunctioning? A sense of uneasiness rose in his heart. He had a feeling that the Ferris wheel had been spinning for so long, it was not as simple as a malfunction. He stood up and walked to the door. With his hand on the door, he looked at the crowd through the window. At that moment, the machine suddenly shook violently. The inside of the carriage swayed for a moment. Then, the operation of the machine came to a sudden halt. The Ferris wheel suddenly stopped running. All the safety measures were removed, and the door lock was automatically unlocked. Due to the shaking of the carriage, Yun Tianyu's body swayed and he lost his balance. He quickly reached out to grab the door handle. However, he didn't expect that the door would be slowly pushed open with his support. At this moment, his entire body was leaning on the door. The door lock was suddenly unlocked, and the door opened outward. His body leaned toward the door. Yun Tianyu was shocked. At this moment, their carriage had stopped at the highest level. Below him was a few dozen meters in the air. The strong wind blew, messing up his hair. At this moment, he could not support his center of gravity and was falling. Yun Tianyu's face turned pale. This accident happened so suddenly that he did not even have time to react before his body fell halfway. Yu. At this critical moment, Xiao Yichen pounced on him and grabbed his arm tightly. High up in the air, Yun Tianyu's body hung outside the carriage. His feet were in the air, and one of his arms was barely hanging on to the edge of the carriage. His other arm was tightly held by Xiao Yichen. Even though he was fast, he was still dragged half a meter away by Yu. Yun Tianyu raised his head and saw Xiao Yichen's face turning red from overexertion. Blue veins gradually appeared on his forehead, and thick, cold sweat trickled down his cheeks. Yun Tianyu was a little surprised. His older brother's grip strength was amazing. Just one of his arms was enough to support his entire weight. Xiao Yichen struggled to hold on to his hand, but the car, which was suspended in mid-air, continued to sway uncontrollably. While bearing the weight of Yun Tianyu, it still had to maintain its center of gravity. He didn't know if the machine had malfunctioned or something else, but it just stopped moving. Xiao Yichen's body gradually slid out of the car. Seeing that the two little munchkins were about to fall out of the car, Xiao Yichen gritted his teeth and reached out to grab hold of the window. Only then did he manage to stabilize the situation. Yun Tianyu's arm, which was being held tightly by him, was obviously strained. The sharp pain from the tearing of his muscles made him break out in cold sweat. Xiao Yichen was not in a better state. His one arm was bearing almost all of Yun Tianyu's weight. If not for his training, his arm would have been dislocated by now. Chapter 446. Hold on to me, don't let go. Xiao Yichen squeezed out these words with much difficulty. Yun Tianyu grabbed Mu Yichen's wrist. He could feel his trembling wrist. His heart ached as he looked at the latter's face, which was covered in cold sweat. He clenched his teeth tightly as he tried to think of a way to climb into the car. He knew that Xiao Yichen could not hold on for long. However, the car was already swaying due to the tilt. He could feel the vibrations coming from the car with just a slight movement. After a few attempts, Yun Tianyu gave up. At this moment, he had calmed down as fast as he could and was thinking of a way to turn the situation around. As he pondered, beads of cold sweat rolled down from his forehead to his cheeks and were blown away by the strong wind. On the one hand, it was because of his nervousness and fear. He knew very well that a child's endurance was limited. Even if little Yichen was unwilling to let go of his hand in order to save him, his arm would cramp, dislocate, or even break under the heavy weight for a long time. When that happened, both of them would lose control and fall to the ground. In order to hold on to him, Xiao Yichen exerted all his strength. He gritted his teeth so hard that he wanted to break them. He was so focused on this that he did not have the energy to think of anything else. The situation was at a stalemate. After being separated from the two little lads, Yun Shishir fumbled around the haunted house for quite some time. Perhaps it was because when a person was extremely worried about another matter, they would not be afraid of certain terrifying things. Therefore, when she accidentally fell to the ground and touched a prop of a rotten corpse, she did not feel the slightest bit of fear. She was only thinking about how the two children were doing. Were they all right? She was so worried that she was about to cry. She had a terrible sense of direction. When she finally found the first aid station, there was no one there. However, she was lucky enough to find a survival blueprint on the table. She held it in her hands as if she had found a treasure. Following the escape route outlined on the blueprint, she finally ran out of the haunted house. However, she saw that the crowd outside was in a mess, and there were people shouting for help from time to time. Yun Shishir kept searching for Yu Yu and Xiao Yichen in the crowd. She was so anxious that her voice trembled. Sorry, have you seen two 6-year-old children? Hello, may I ask if you've seen the two children? Many people turned their heads indifferently. In her anxiety, Yun Shishir heard someone in the crowd say, "Quick, go take a look. The Ferris wheel has malfunctioned, and the two children are trapped on it." When she heard this, she immediately pushed the crowd. She grabbed the man's collar and asked in a panic, "What did you say? You said that two children are trapped on the Ferris wheel?" "Yes." "What kind of children are they?" "I can't see clearly. I only know that they are two children." As soon as he said that, Yun Shishir immediately ran in the direction of the Ferris wheel. Chapter 447. Li Hanlin was on high alert. No matter who they were, even if they were children, he ordered them to stay away. When Yun Shishir arrived at the scene, she was, without exception, chased away by the security personnel. She was in a daze as she was constantly pushed and even warned. As she was being pushed, she looked up and saw the two children hanging from the Ferris wheel. Her eyesight was not good, but from the color of their clothes, she could tell that the children hanging outside the window were Yu Yu. Yu Yu. She cried out in alarm and immediately struggled to get up. She cried and shouted, "The two up there are my children. Something happened to them. I can't leave, I can't leave." The security guards did not listen to her explanation. Li Hanlin had ordered that no matter who they were, they should stay away and not get close. Xianxia held back her tears and said, I don't know who gave you the order, but please understand that I am the mother of those 2 children. Please tell them to let me go. The 2 security guards looked at each other. In the end, they still felt a little sympathetic. Seeing that there was nothing suspicious about her, they didn't dare to take it lightly and sent someone to report it. Not long after, Li Hanlin arrived. When he saw that it was Xianxia, he immediately said, Miss Yun, you're here. Principal Li, why are you here? Xianxia was shocked, but she did not have time to think. Yu is up there. My 2 children are up there. What should I do? Don't panic, I've already sent someone to think of a way. Li Hanlin held the walkie-talkie. When will the emergency backup arrive? Mr. Li, we're already thinking of a way. The person reported. D***it. Li Hanlin gritted his teeth and cursed. The staff had just reported that the Ferris wheel had malfunctioned, not because of the machine, but because of human error. Human error. This meant that the Ferris wheel malfunction was not accidental, but premeditated. He had sent someone to check the surveillance footage, but before the Ferris wheel malfunctioned, the closed-circuit system had been cut off, so all the surveillance footage during that period of time had been lost. Right now, he couldn't think of anything else. He could only wait for help. The malfunction of the Ferris wheel had been fixed, but when the children were in danger, they had to consider their safety first, so it could not be started. Xianxia stood at the bottom of the Ferris wheel and stared at the carriage hanging at the top with trepidation. Due to the tilt on one side, the carriage seemed to be on the verge of collapsing. Yin Tianyu was hanging outside the carriage for an unknown period of time. The strong wind was blowing at high altitudes, and his body was already thin and frail. Her heart clenched tightly. She nervously covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. She wanted to do something, but she was completely powerless at the moment. The only thing she could do was to watch helplessly. This feeling of powerlessness and defeat filled his entire body. If she could, even if she had to use her life in exchange for the safety of these 2 children, she would not hesitate to do so. Inside the Ferris wheel, Xiao Yichen and Yin Tianyu had been in a stalemate for more than 10 minutes. Both of them were on the verge of exhaustion. Chapter 448. One of his hands was fastened to the car's safety handrail while the other was gripping Yin Tianyu's arm tightly. His eyes were fierce and focused. Perhaps due to the force exerted by him, he had unknowingly bitten the corner of his lip, causing a trickle of blood to seep out. Yin Tianyu reached out his hand again, wanting to hook onto the car door, but the distance was not enough, so he gave up once more. Time ticked by, second by second. Xiao Yichen's strength was rapidly depleting. He forced his eyes open. Even though sweat had seeped into his eyes, he did not dare to blink. Xiao Yichen looked at Yin Tianyu and slowly said, Yu, I don't think I can hold on for much longer. He knew how much strength he had left. 10 minutes was already the limit of the limit. Not to mention a child, even an adult man would find it difficult to hold on for so long. It was already a miracle. He knew very well that if this continued, he would lose feeling in his arm due to numbness. It might even be dislocated or, worse, fractured. Yin Tianyu's emotions had calmed down, so much so that it was strange. He knew that it was not easy to hold on for so long. He also knew that Xiao Yichen had done his best to save him without regard for his own safety. He was indeed at his limit now. He opened his mouth and wanted to tell him, if you can't hold on any longer, just let me go. At least, save one person. He also wanted to say, if I'm doomed this time, you must protect mommy on my behalf. However, before he could open his mouth, Xiao Yichen calmly said, don't be afraid, I won't let go. Yin Tianyu's eyes lost focus as he dazedly raised his head to look at him with empty eyes. Under his overlapping and unfocused gaze, Xiao Yichen changed from his usual cold and arrogant expression to one of doting gentleness. He lightly said, I'm your brother, I'll protect you. Yin Tianyu's heart surged with shock when he heard this. Her tone was calm, her words were simple, and there were no fancy vows. However, her true feelings towards him were completely revealed. The corners of Yun Tianyo's lips, which were originally calm, slowly curled into a gentle smile. If he didn't give up, then he shouldn't give up either. Even if he had to risk it, he couldn't give up. Yun Tianyu gently closed his eyes, and the entire structure of the car appeared in his mind. With a rough idea in mind, he said, I have an idea. Xiao Yichen frowned and immediately asked, what is it? Behind you, the seat should be equipped with a seatbelt. Do you see it? Xiao Yichen turned around and saw the seatbelt. He nodded in response, I see it. It has a bearing capacity of 200 kilograms. Can you catch it? Let me try. Wait. Yun Tianyu said, if a person exerts force with both hands at the same time, it's easy to dislocate both arms. Xiao Yichen was stunned. Then what should we do? Now, I'll grab your arm with both hands. You can use less strength with this arm. Then, carefully grab the seatbelt and use the seatbelt to pull me up. With that, he paused for a moment before continuing. Needless to say, your arm will be dislocated if you do that. Chapter 449. Xiao Yichen ignored his last sentence. He tried his best to hold on to the safety lever and leaned his body forward slightly to ensure that Yun Tianyu could grab hold of his arm with both hands. Their actions caused the security personnel below to exclaim in alarm. They were all professionally trained security personnel and were well aware of the limits of the human body. They knew that such an action was extremely dangerous for Xiao Yichen. Yun Xianxia watched on with trepidation. Her heart was beating faster and faster. She was constantly in agony. Yun Tianyu quickly grabbed hold of Xiao Yichen's arm. Although his grip was not as strong as Xiao Yichen's, in this extremely dangerous situation, a person's instinctive will to survive came into play. He gritted his teeth, grabbed hold of Xiao Yichen's arm, and said, I've got a firm grip. Are you sure? Xiao Yichen was clearly worried that his grip was not strong enough. If he let go, you would fall. Yes. Go grab that safety belt. Okay. Be careful, you must tell me if you can't hold on. With that, Xiao Yichen reached for the safety belt. He failed to grab hold of it after several attempts. However, he was not discouraged. He was racing against time, knowing that every second was a great test for Yun Tianyu. Finally, after much effort, he managed to grab hold of the safety belt. After wrapping the safety belt around his wrist a few times and holding it tightly, Xiao Yichen turned his head and said, I've got it. Now, I'll pull you up. You must hold on to my arm. Okay. Yun Tianyu was silent for half a second before he vowed, I know you can do it, I believe in you. Okay. Xiao Yichen smiled and began to pull him up with all his might. Gritting his teeth, he exerted the last bit of strength in his body and, with a low growl, dragged the boy into the car in an instant. As he pulled Yun Tianyu up, his elbow was dislocated with a crack. Yun Tianyo's left wrist was also dislocated because he exerted too much force. The two little lads rolled into the car. Yun Tianyu quickly grabbed hold of the other safety belt and put it on his shoulder to stabilize his center of gravity. Below them, a series of cheers could be heard. Yun Xianxia was stunned for a long time. Her eyes widened in disbelief. The two little guys actually saved themselves. Oh, God. This is a miracle. Only when the car door was closed and locked by Xiao Yichen did she believe that a miracle had truly happened. In her agitation, tears fell like rain. Her body, due to the momentary relaxation after excessive tension, she was limp. She half knelt until now, her heartbeat was still unable to calm, as dislocated, too. For a moment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings. However, he seemed to be able to tolerate pain. Even though his wrist was dislocated and deformed, his face remained as calm as still water. Instead, he was more concerned about Yun Tianyo's arm. How's your wrist? I think it's dislocated. Yun Tianyu could not tolerate pain, but he was strong enough to endure it. Even though he was drenched in cold sweat, he did not cry out in pain. After a moment of silence, he was still worried about Xiao Yichen's injury. Chapter 450. Are you okay? He asked softly and carefully. His tone was no longer as cold and distant as before. Xiao Yichen was agitated by his change in attitude. Although he did not show it on his face, it was reflected in his trembling voice. I am fine. Your elbow is dislocated. Does it hurt? It should be very painful. After persisting for so long, his nerves must be numb. Now, with a dislocated elbow, Xiao Yichen hurriedly consoled him. Don't worry, I'm used to it. This is a common occurrence during training. A child's world was very simple. Perhaps, Yun Tianyu was previously hostile toward Xiao Yichen and Mu Yaja. He was afraid that these two would barge into his carefully guarded world and snatch away his mommy's love. However, a friend in need was a friend indeed. He was not heartless or cold-blooded. Moreover, they were connected by blood. Looking at Xiao Yichen's injured arm now, his heart ached more or less. Yun Tianyu gave Li Hanlin a call and asked him to start the Ferris wheel. Li Hanlin immediately picked up the walkie-talkie and asked the control panel to start the machine. The Ferris wheel slowly resumed operation. The two little lads sat facing each other. Both of them looked quite disheveled. Their hair was messy, their cheeks were wet with cold sweat, and their faces were flushed red. However, when they looked at each other, they seemed to have an innate understanding and smiled at each other. You're better than I thought. Yun Tianyu pursed his lips and gave a rare compliment. It was very rare for him to praise someone. This time, however, it was from the bottom of his heart. If not for Xiao Yichen's strong physique, who had persisted for so long, he really did not know what would have been waiting for him. Xiao Yichen blushed shyly at this compliment. He opened his mouth a few times, but no words came out. He was obviously shy. The Ferris wheel slowly descended to the ground. The tourists poured out of the car like a tidal wave. The security personnel were in charge of guiding the crowd. When Yun Tianyu and Xiao Yichen came out holding each other's arms, Yun Shishir broke through the crowd and ran toward them. When Xiao Yichen saw Yun Shishir, his heart skipped a beat. Then, he felt a surge of warmth. He had narrowly escaped death, and the first person he saw was this woman. Even though he still didn't know who this woman was or if she was his biological mother, he still felt that it was great. His heart felt very warm. To be honest, if this gentle woman in front of her was her mommy, how good would that be? He did not hold much affection for Mu Wanru. After all, he was not her biological child. Mu Wanru's love for him was only superficial. However, no matter how well she did it, the child could not feel any maternal love from her. Naturally, he would not be close to her. Like her very much. If this woman was his biological mother, then he would acknowledge her without hesitation. If she was his mommy, then it would be a very blissful thing. Xiao Yichen clenched his fists tightly. He was a little nervous. When Yu saw her, his originally calm face immediately changed to one of grievance and shock. He pouted his little mouth and his watery eyes were instantly filled with tears. Mommy, Wu, her voice was so sweet that it scared Xiao Yichen. The latter's face was filled with horror and disbelief. It was even more frightening than when he was in imminent danger. Chapter 451. Why, he was calm and collected earlier, but why did his IQ seem to drop by 8 levels the moment he was in front of Yun Shishir? He was just like a childish child acting coquettishly in front of his mother. Was this an act? Xiao Yichen was dumbfounded. Yun Tianyu was agitated that Yun Shishir was safe and sound. On the one hand, he was whining to her so that Yun Shishir could comfort him. His skills were naturally top-notch, so tears streamed down his face instantly. Seeing this, Yun Shishir felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. It was about to shatter into pieces. She immediately half-knelt in front of him and carefully pulled him into her embrace. Her throat was choked with sobs. You, my baby, don't cry, don't cry. Mommy is here, mommy is here. Yun Shishir kept comforting him. Her heart was in so much pain that she forgot about Xiao Yichen, who was standing at the side. Yun Tianyu held his dislocated wrist and said delicately, "Mommy, my wrist is broken. It hurts." His coquettish tone was the complete opposite of his cold and calm tone on the Ferris wheel. Xiao Yichen almost vomited blood. He could not tell at all. His younger brother was so good at acting spoiled. Yun Shishir looked at his dislocated wrist and felt her heart wrench. When she looked at Yun Tianyu's pale face, her tears flowed uncontrollably. Her heart was in so much pain that she wished that she could bear all the pain that Yun Tianyu was suffering. You're injured. It's Mommy's fault. Mommy didn't protect you well." Yun Shishir's heart was in so much pain that it felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She kept apologizing to Yu, feeling that she had not fulfilled her responsibility to protect the child. She blamed herself endlessly, and her heart ached so much that her tears fell like rain. Xiao Yichen stood by the side and watched helplessly. His heart ached. He suddenly remembered that today was his birthday. It was supposed to be a happy birthday with his father, but the Song sisters came uninvited. Not only did they disturb the birthday atmosphere, but they also sowed discord and made his father angry with him. They even left him alone in the amusement park. Wuxia knew that this was a punishment. However, after experiencing such a dangerous situation, Wuxia's heart was filled with complaints and grievances. Suddenly, he was envious of Yun Tianyu. It was great to have a mother who doted on him so much. It wasn't just a little, but a lot of envy that seeped deep into his bones. He was so envious that he was a little jealous. He felt that Yun Shishir's body was like a warm sun. When he got closer, he felt warm. Xiao Yichen pursed his lips and greedily took a careful step toward Yun Shishir's direction. He got closer and closer. It was as if he would be satisfied just by standing a little closer to her. Yun Tianyu caught his little action from the corner of his eye. He lifted his head from Yun Shishir's embrace and looked at him. Following his gaze, Yun Shishir looked up as well. Yun Tianyu subtly shrunk his body and gave Yun Shishir half the space in her embrace. He hugged her shoulders and whispered into her ear, "Mommy, Big Brother saved me. His name is Wuxian." Big Brother, although he did not call him Big Brother in front of Xiao Yichen, it was enough to prove that he acknowledged Xiao Yichen from the bottom of his heart. This meant that he acknowledged this Big Brother. Chapter 452. It was just that he had always been shy about expressing it. However, it was precisely because he approved of it that he gave up half of the space in Yun Shishir's arms. In the past, he had never liked any child sharing Yun Shishir's love with him. But now, he had thought it through. He shouldn't have been so selfish. This way of thinking was a little too childish. Mommy probably liked Xiao Yichen too, right? If he stood in the way, Mommy would definitely be sad. He would never do anything that would make Mommy sad. Yun Shishir looked at Xiao Yichen. At this moment, he was standing helplessly in front of her, holding his dislocated arm. He looked a little uneasy. Her gaze fell on his deformed elbow joint, and her heart ached even more. She didn't know why he was in this amusement park, and she didn't know why he suddenly appeared to save them. Yes, she was saved by this child. He was only 6 years old, but he saved her and Yu in the nick of time. She was very grateful and touched by him, but more than that, she was flustered after surviving a disaster. However, she didn't dare to speak. If she was too proactive, she was afraid that she would scare the child or cause him to reject her. Thus, she asked carefully, "Xiao Yichen, are you okay?" Hearing her call his name, Xiao Yichen widened his eyes in shock. His eyelashes trembled slightly, and his lips couldn't help but tremble. He hadn't shed a single tear during that dangerous moment, but now his eyes were slightly moist. Her voice was so gentle, like a warm little spring that flowed into his heart. His body, which had turned cold from fear, suddenly warmed up. He didn't know how to respond to her and appeared a little clumsy. He wanted to tell her that he was fine and that he didn't want her to worry. But subconsciously, he wanted to tell her that his dislocated arm was actually very painful. The thrilling experience he had just experienced had left him in a state of shock. The fear in his heart had yet to dissipate, and he was hoping for her comfort and heartache. He had never been good with words, so he didn't know how to express his feelings. Xianxia was also very patient. She extended her palm to him and slowly opened it. Come, let me have a look, okay? He looked at Xianxia's outstretched hand. It was as white as jade, and her fingers were long and slender. They were warm and soft. It was especially beautiful. She thought of Mu Wanru's hands. They were bony with thin joints and looked like 5 sharp knives. On the other hand, Xianxia's hands were beautiful. Xiao Yichen nodded timidly. He took a step closer to Xianxia and tried to look at her face. However, he saw that she was looking at him gently, patiently and warmly. Xiao Yichen's heart seemed to be touched by this smile. The mother and son seemed to have a telepathic connection as they walked towards her. Xianxia carefully put her arm around his shoulders, and Xiao Yichen took the opportunity to lean into her embrace. However, he carefully hid his hands behind his back. He didn't want her to worry. Xianxia's sharp eyes caught this small movement of his. Sometimes, although these two children didn't grow up together, they would often do the same thing. In the past, Yu was also afraid that she would be worried and upset, so he didn't tell her about certain things. Your hand is injured? Let me have a look. She couldn't hide the worry on her face, and the heartache in her eyes was almost visible. Chapter 453. Xiao Yichen shook his head. He was clearly the one who was injured, yet he was the one comforting her. It's all right, it doesn't hurt. How can it not hurt? Let me see. Xianxia could not help but let go of his hand. She carefully lifted his arm and, as expected, his elbow was dislocated and deformed. Her heart ached so much that her fingertips trembled uncontrollably. With a lump in her throat, she said sadly, "It must be very painful." The thought of the earlier scene made his heart palpitate. The Ferris wheel had stopped, and Yintianyo's entire body was hanging outside the carriage. If not for little Yichen's tight grip on his arm, the two lads would most likely have met with misfortune. It was so high up, dozens of meters. It was as high as a 20-story building. What if they fell? They would definitely be smashed to pieces. She had almost lost her 2 children. At that critical moment, she could not do anything and could only watch helplessly as her imagination ran wild. Xianxia still felt a lingering fear at the thought of that tragic scene. Thank you for saving Yu. Thank you. Xianxia was extremely grateful to this child. Her heart ached so much that tears fell from her eyes as she hugged the 2 disheveled children. Her heartache seemed to have infected Xiao Yichen as well. He opened his mouth and tried several times to call out that warm and unfamiliar word, but in the end, he only managed to utter a few vague syllables. Inside, he kept repeating, "Mommy. Mommy." It was very strange. The woman before him was clearly a stranger, yet it was so magical that there was a special bond between mother and son. Even though he had not been with her for the past 6 years, he still could not help but feel an inexplicable closeness toward her. She could give him warmth that Mu Wanru could not. However, what he knew all this while restrained him, so he could not easily call out those 2 words. Even so, he still yearned for this warmth from deep in his heart. The ambulance arrived in no time. Xiao Yichen and Yu were carefully placed on stretchers and carried into the ambulance. Xianxia followed closely behind the medical team. Along the way, the nurses performed various basic tests on them. Xianxia, who was standing at the side, felt her heart clench as she repeatedly asked about the 2 children's condition. The nurses hurriedly comforted her, saying that there was no danger from the preliminary tests. As for the rest, they would have to undergo further tests at the hospital to confirm their condition. They told her not to worry too much. After all, the 2 children were still in good spirits. Other than their dislocated hands, there should be no other major issues. Only then did Xianxia's heart. Yu's a little tired. Her lips curled into a smile as she patted her son's head. Close your eyes and sleep. We'll be at the hospital soon. Mommy, you must tell the doctor that Yu is afraid of pain. You have to be gentle and not rough, the little boy warned with a serious expression. Xianxia did not know whether to laugh or cry. The nurses at the side laughed as well. Little boy, don't worry. We'll be very gentle. Don't worry. Then I'm relieved. His brows relaxed as if he had heaved a sigh of relief. His witty sigh made the nurses smile again. This little guy is so cute. He looks so fresh and his skin is so tender. He's so handsome. Yes, yes. He'll definitely be very handsome when he grows up. I'm afraid he'll charm many little girls. Chapter 454. Xianxia shifted her gaze to Xiao Yichen. He was lying there motionlessly, but his gaze never left her. He was captivated by her every frown and smile. Xiao Yichen blushed when he saw Xianxia looking at him. He shyly averted his gaze and felt so awkward that he didn't know where to place his hands. Xianxia slowly reached out and placed her hand on his. Her warmth traveled from the back of his hand all the way to his heart. Xiao Yichen's face turned even redder. His heart thumped furiously, and he was so nervous that he didn't dare to look at her. Are you alone? Xianxia asked. Why don't I see your daddy? Xiao Yichen's face darkened slightly at the mention of Wuxia. He doesn't want me anymore. He felt so aggrieved that his eyelashes fluttered down. How could that be? He dotes on you a lot. But he doesn't want me anymore. Really? Xiao Yichen clenched his fists so tightly that his fingertips almost pierced through his palms. Don't overthink it. What exactly happened? Xianxia comforted him. After being guided patiently, the little fellow finally told him the whole story. He told her about how Wuxia had given him a surprise birthday present and how he wanted to accompany him to Fairy Tale Valley to the Song sisters coming over to cause trouble. In the end, he talked about how his father had gotten angry with him because of Song and she, and even left him alone in the amusement park. He told him everything in detail, no matter how big or small. Originally, he shouldn't have shed tears, but children were usually pretentious in front of their mothers. As he spoke, his eyes reddened, and tears flowed down his cheeks uncontrollably. This matter had obviously hurt him deeply. Xianxia's heart ached when she heard it. She couldn't believe that Wuxia was such a cold-blooded father that he would leave his child alone in such a huge amusement park. She also learned from Li Hanlin that before Wuxia left, he had specifically instructed Li Hanlin to take good care of Xiao Yichen. Although she couldn't agree with how Wuxia had entrusted his child to an outsider, Xianxia still believed that Xiao Yichen was still in his heart. Although Xiao Yichen shouldn't take full responsibility for the previous incident, it was inevitable that he would let his emotions affect his decisions and solve the problem in the wrong way. As a parent, she should patiently guide him until he untangled the knot in his heart. Perhaps a father's love wasn't as delicate as a mother's love, so he couldn't solve the problem from the root. At this time, what she should do was to straighten out the knot in the child's heart and let him understand his father. She shouldn't stand on the child's side and instigate conflict. Hence, she said, your daddy definitely cares about you. You shouldn't think of him that way. He cares about Song Enya and Song and she, not me. Xiao Yichen held back his tears and said with reddened eyes, today is my birthday. We should celebrate it properly. Xianxia patiently comforted him again, telling him not to think too much. The ambulance soon arrived at the hospital. The two little guys were carried to the operating trolley and hurriedly sent to the emergency room. Xianxia anxiously followed behind until she was politely blocked outside the door by a nurse. She then sat on the long bench outside the door in a daze, not knowing what to do. Chapter 455. Inside the doctor's office at the hospital. Song Enya sat anxiously in front of the doctor. The doctor looked at her, then at the man standing behind her with a cold expression. He slowly said, the child has a soft tissue contusion on his head, and he has a mild concussion. The wound has been disinfected and stitched up. Don't let it come into contact with water for the next few days, and avoid spicy food. Stitches? Song Enya was startled and could not help but interrupt him. Yes, how can he not be stitched up? The wound is a little deep. The child probably fell down the stairs and hit his head on the corner. The doctor adjusted his glasses and spoke in a more respectful tone. If it were any other patient, he would have long lost his patience after being interrupted repeatedly. However, he knew this woman's identity, so he treated her with utmost politeness and caution regardless of whether he offended her. Song Enya was stunned. Is the wound that deep? Concussion? Is it that serious? The doctor patiently explained, it's just a mild concussion. It's not particularly serious, so there's usually no need for special treatment. He'll slowly recover with proper rest. Will there be any impact on the brain? Will there be repercussions or something like that? No. The doctor rolled his eyes inwardly. How can it be that serious? This woman is simply medically illiterate. Song Enya asked many more questions, most of which were whether the stitches on the back of Song Enshi's head would leave a scar. The answer was yes. It was inevitable that there would be a scar, and it would be difficult for hair to grow in that area in the future. Fortunately, the wound was not too big. It was only 3 stitches, and the area was about the size of a thumb. Girls had a lot of hair, so they just needed to cover it up. Muyaja's thoughts, however, were not on Song Enshi at all. In fact, he knew Xiao Yichen's character very well. Song Enshi kept saying that Xiao Yichen had pushed her down and even bullied her. However, the truth was that he was not present at the scene, so he could only know a thing or two about the situation from the child. The only thing he was certain of was that Xiao Yichen would not do such a bad thing. Compared to children his age, his personality was considered more mature. Therefore, he rarely played with children his age and always felt that they were childish. Therefore, it was even more impossible for him to take the initiative to bully a child, let alone commit such a vile act. However, the situation at that time was rather chaotic, and he did not have the time to understand what had happened. Song Enshi's cries alone were enough to give him a headache. At that time, the situation was urgent. The only thing he could do was to send the child to the hospital as soon as possible. After the incident, he deduced that Song Enshi and Xiao Yichen must have gotten into some sort of conflict. Regardless of who started the conflict, Song Enshi must have bitten Xiao Yichen first. In a moment of desperation, Xiao Yichen pushed her away. Xiao Yichen was a child who knew his limits. He had once warned him not to bully other children with violence. He had always been strict with himself and had done a good job. Perhaps Song Enshi had been pushed and tripped on the steps, causing her head to bleed. That was probably the case. That was his guess. As a father, of course, he would choose to believe in his child. Moreover, his love for Song Enshi was just for show. Xiao Yichen was his real son. If he didn't love him, who would he love? Chapter 456. He, too, wanted to give Xiao Yichen an unforgettable and blissful birthday. He had also pushed back many cases and even ended his agenda early to rush back and give him a surprise. But who would have thought that this birthday party would end in such a way where both sides would suffer? When they walked out of the doctor's office, Muyaja strode in front with Song Enya trailing behind him. She looked at the man's tall and handsome back and wanted to say something several times, but she stopped herself each time. This man's lofty image in her heart had always been irreplaceable. She had liked to stick to him since she was young. Logically speaking, since Jiang Qimeng and Jiang Yishan were nieces, she should address this man as uncle. However, she felt that calling him uncle was too distant, so she always called him brother Mu, as if this form of address was more intimate. As she grew older, this feeling gradually evolved into a young girl's throbbing heart and adoration. Although the two were related by blood, there were many marriages between cousins in the rich and powerful society, so there were no restrictions. She had dreamed of becoming Muyaja's bride since she was young. This had always been her wish. It was just that he already had a fiancé. This became the biggest thorn in her heart. There was no doubt that Muyaja was a perfect man. She was proud and arrogant, thinking that only such a man was worthy of her. The Song family was one of the most powerful and influential families in the capital. In terms of status, she and Brother Mu were a true match. That Mu Wanru, who came from nowhere, was not qualified to be Brother Mu's fiancé. Song Enya looked down on her very much. After deliberating for a moment, she caught up with Mu Yaja and walked beside him. She said cautiously, Brother Mu, there are some things that I don't know if I should say. Mu Yaja, who was in a state of turmoil, only frowned when he heard her words. He walked into the smoking room, took out a cigarette from the cigarette box, lit it, and took a deep puff. Song Enya followed him in. Seeing his cold face and furrowed brows, she immediately thought of something and said, Brother Mu, are you worried about Xiao Yichen? Mu Yaja looked up at her but did not say a word. Song Enya continued, although Xiao Yichen shouldn't have bullied Enshi like that, Brother Mu, you were too cruel to leave him alone at the amusement park. Xiao Yichen may have trained in the special forces since he was young, but do you really feel at ease leaving him alone? Ease? Of course, he was worried. He regretted it the moment he left him behind. However, as a father, the dignity he should have was not to be looked down upon. Little Yichen had never disobeyed him, especially in front of outsiders. He had always been strict with him. In such a situation, even if he felt wronged, he should have suppressed it no matter what. He should not have added fuel to the fire. A 6-year-old child should give way to a 5-year-old girl. This was the philosophy of the upper-class gentleman and the family's unspoken rule. It was not to be violated. He just wanted to teach him a lesson. Besides, how could an insensible child be angry with her? How could that be? However, Mu Yaja did not say anything. Disciplining the child was his family's business, and he did not like outsiders interfering. Chapter 457. Mu Yaja's eyes flashed with impatience at his niece's words. Song Enya did not bother to look at his expression as she continued, still, it's good to teach the child a lesson. Children shouldn't be spoiled, especially boys. If they don't follow the rules from a young age, they won't be like those hedonistic sons of rich families when they grow up. They won't be disciplined and will ruin the family's discipline. Because of this, I don't think you've done anything wrong. Her words didn't go through the filter of her brain. Mu Yaja narrowed his eyes slightly, and displeasure quickly appeared on his face. And she has never suffered like this before. She even had to get 3 stitches in her back. Oh, my God. She's always been vain. If she finds out about this, she'll definitely kick up a fuss, Enya. Mu Yaja flicked the ash off his cigarette and took one last puff before extinguishing it in the ashtray. He then slowly said, Mu Yichen is my son. Huh? She did not understand his expression, let alone the meaning behind his words. No matter how bad it is, it's not up to outsiders to judge. His voice was not loud, but it was powerful and filled with coldness. She was stunned. Only then did she realize that what she had said earlier was indeed inappropriate. She was extremely vexed. Brother Mu Yaja looked at her coldly, his tone icy. I dote on you because you're my cousin. You've been willful since you were young. Perhaps, everyone dotes on you. But I think you know that there are some bottom lines about me that can't be crossed. Song Enshi's heart skipped a beat. She repeatedly adjusted her expression before she awkwardly tugged at the corner of her lips. Brother Mu, I'm sorry. I understand what you mean. I went overboard. Besides, you should go back and ask your sister what she did to anger Yichen. Mu Yaja walked up to her. Today is his birthday, and I should have accompanied him. I shouldn't have come with you guys in the first place. I'm very unhappy that this happened, too. He was angry. Startled, Song Enya quickly explained, no matter how willful and she is, she can't possibly, this matter ends here. Don't talk about it anymore. Mu Yaja interrupted her impatiently and walked around her. Song Enya could sense that something was amiss. Feeling vexed at her self-righteous attitude earlier, she hurriedly chased after him. Ouch, 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 there were 2 special-grade intensive care beds in the ward. By the time the 2 little fellows were wheeled out of the emergency room, their dislocations had already been fixed. Xiao Yichen's injuries were slightly more serious, so they still needed to be fixed with bandages for a few days. The two little munchkins were dislocated and had some abrasions. Xiao Yichen had hit his head in the car and had a slight concussion. However, it wasn't serious. He would recover after a few days of rest. The doctor patiently told Yun Shishir about some taboos, and Yun Shishir listened attentively. Throughout the entire process, Mu Yichen's face was tense. Even when his arm was reattached, his brows did not crease at all. He looked very brave. Yun Tianyu, on the other hand, could not bear the pain. However, when he saw Mu Yichen's strong look, he instinctively felt that he was too strong. With him as an example, no matter how much pain Yun Tianyu was in, he was too embarrassed to shed tears. Hence, he did not cry like other children. The doctor and nurses were surprised. A 6-year-old child usually did not have the ability to endure pain. Chapter 458. If it had been any other child, he or she would have burst into tears when the arm was reattached with this kind of injury. The nurses would have had to constantly coax him or her. Although it was a small injury, the reattachment was very painful. It was enough to frighten many timid children. However, these two little fellows were surprisingly patient. It was as if they were in a competition. Neither of them cried or made a fuss. The two little fellows were worry-free, and the doctor felt much more at ease. He quickly completed the simple treatment of the injury. Because of this, he could not help but praise Yun Shishir. Your two children are so brave. They didn't even cry. When Yun Shishir heard this, she did not know whether to be happy or worried. She always felt that when an outsider praised her two 6-year-old children for being sensible, obedient, and mature, as a mother, other than feeling gratified, she also felt a little upset. When they returned to the ward, because Xiao Yichen's injury was more serious and he needed to be hospitalized, Yun Shishir hurriedly withdrew some money to pay for the hospital fees. She also bought some fruits and desserts. Children probably all like sweets. Yu loved to eat Western biscuits and tiramisu. This time, Yun Shishir specially went to a Western biscuit shop and bought 2 sets. She also specially selected many different flavors and put in a lot of effort. Xiao Yichen had never eaten tiramisu before. When he took a bite, his eyes lit up. Yun Shishir was naturally happy when she saw that he liked it. She fed him mouthful by mouthful. Xiao Yichen, who was originally tense, gradually revealed a sincere smile. Is it good? Yun Shishir asked and fed him another mouthful. Xiao Yichen's eyes moved. He opened his mouth and took a mouthful. Milk foam filled his mouth. His heart felt warm. Mu Wanra had never fed him like this. The last time his daddy fed him was when he had a high fever and couldn't get out of bed. Daddy's actions were not as gentle as this. He seemed a little stiff and often scalded his mouth. Yes, yes. It's so sweet. I want more. Xiao Yichen happily curled his lips and licked the tip of his tongue. His eyes and brows resembled Mu Yaja, but when he smiled, he was so cute and cheeky. He was extremely adorable. This child should smile more. He was very cute. She recalled the first time she saw him. His face was stern and cold. He turned around indifferently, but the coldness on his face made her heart palpitate. He looked exactly like that man when his face was tense. The father and son were exactly the same. However, a 6-year-old child was at his most innocent and naive. He should smile more. Yun Shishir's mood brightened as she fed him spoonful after spoonful. Soon, the box of tiramisu. Alas, the boy did not seem to have had enough. With a greedy look, his gaze swept across the desserts. She could read his mind at a glance and smilingly said, "You can't eat too much desserts, or else your teeth will rot. It's nothing. How about another pastry? I want more." Xiao Yichen's eyes revealed his desire. His coquettish skills were not as good as Yuntinyo's, so this level of desire was equivalent to him acting coquettishly to her. Yun Shishir could not win against him. She repeatedly reminded him, "It's the last one." Thus, she opened the wrapping paper of the pastry. Xiao Yichen was secretly delighted. A child could not hide his thoughts, and this joy quickly surfaced on his face. Yun Shishir did not know that he was not being greedy. He was clearly enjoying the process of her feeding him gently. No matter how much he disliked the pastry, he still found it delicious. Chapter 459. The pastry was small, but Yun Shishir was afraid that the child would choke on it, so she deliberately broke it into 2 pieces. She then poured some milk into the pastry, dipped it in it, and fed it to him. Awoo! Xiao Yichen took a bite of the pastry. Combined with the milk's aroma, it tasted pretty good. Perhaps it was because Yun Shishir fed it, so it tasted good no matter what. Is it good? Yummy, yummy. Xiao Yichen said with satisfaction. The mother-son pair looked at each other and smiled warmly. Yun Tianyu lay on the hospital bed with a gloomy face. He seemed to be unhappy. He pouted, feeling that Mu Yichen had taken away his privilege. Why did mommy only care about coaxing him and not asking him about his condition? Yun Tianyu suddenly felt a little regretful. He was indeed a little selfish. He was still a little reluctant to cede Yun Shishir's love to Mu Yichen. Initially, he had enjoyed all of her love and affection, but now, he had no choice but to accept it. Now, however, he had to give away half of it, or even more. His heart ached a little. Hence, he covered the area where the bandage was wrapped and let out a few pitiful moans. Yun Shishir heard his moans and felt as if a knife was being twisted in her heart. She seemed to realize that she had neglected the little guy, so she immediately turned to Yun Tianyu and asked anxiously, "Yu, what's wrong? Does your wound hurt?" Yun Tianyu shook his head and pretended to be strong. "It doesn't hurt. It must hurt. Mommy heard it." Yun Shishir rubbed his little cheeks. "Yu has suffered. Mommy, give me a kiss." Yun Shishir leaned over and planted a kiss on his forehead. Yun Tianyu was elated, but he proudly said, "Is one kiss enough?" No. Okay. Mommy will give you 2 more kisses." Yun Shishir coaxed him. She then cupped his pink cheeks and gave him 2 more kisses. Yu then pursed his lips in satisfaction. The tears at the corners of his eyes had yet to dry, so he said coquettishly, "Yu's mouth is dry. I want to eat an orange." "All right. Mommy will peel it for you." Yun Shishir dotingly scratched his nose bridge, then took out an orange, and quickly peeled it. After peeling, she immediately separated the peeled tangerine into bags and fed it to him, piece by piece. With teary eyes, Yun Tianyu opened his mouth and took a bite of the orange. The sweet and sour juice immediately filled his mouth. Only then did his expression soften a little. Lying on the other bed, little Yichen stared at her with wide eyes. Inwardly, she was a little envious of the meticulous care Yun Tianyu received. Licking her dry lips in envy, she imitated Yun Tianyu and meekly called out, "It hurts." Ugh! Yun Tianyu's expression froze for a moment. Was this lad imitating him? Yun Shishir was startled. She immediately turned around and caressed Xiao Yichen's cheek with her warm palm. She asked with concern, "Where does it hurt?" "It hurts here." Xiao Yichen desperately squeezed out 2 pitiful tears and pointed to the dislocated shoulder. "It hurts so much. Is it serious? Could it be that you didn't reattach it properly?" Yun Shishir was nervous and at a loss. Xiao Yichen immediately comforted her. "It's okay. The doctor reattached it for me. It just hurts. I'll be fine after eating some biscuits." Yun Shishir, Yun Tianyu. Chapter 460. He did not even frown when the doctor treated his arm in the emergency room earlier, yet he was already acting pretentious when his mommy peeled an orange for him. Yun Tianyu's face was sullen. What was worse was that his mommy had fallen into his trap. Hence, she obediently peeled an orange for him by his bedside. Yun Tianyu was a little displeased. This rascal was clearly trying to snatch his mommy away from him, wasn't he? How could he let him have his way? Yun Tianyu's eyes turned to Yun Shishir, and he waved his hand. "Mommy, Yu wants to pee." Mui Chen, Yun Shishir rushed over at once. She took the toilet paper from the drawer and carried Yun Tianyu to the bathroom. While Yun Shishir was carrying him, Yun Tianyu stuck out his tongue at Mui Chen and made a face at him. He then smugly allowed Yun Shishir to carry him away. Mui Chen was completely speechless. He did not think about Yun Tianyu's skills, though. Although he was young, he had Yun Shishir under his thumb. How could Mui Chen be his match when it came to fighting for favor? Perhaps, Yun Tianyu was no match for him in terms of skills. However, Mui Chen was no match for Yun Tianyu when it came to scheming. Hence, in the bathroom, Yun Tianyu, who had taken off his underwear, began to stall for time. "I can't pee." After a long while, he blurted this out. Yun Shishir did not know whether to laugh or cry. "Mommy will help you put on your underwear, then." "I don't want to." "Huh?" Yun Shishir was baffled. After a long while, Yun Tianyu said, "I think I want to pee." Yun Shishir's lips twitched. "All right. Call me mommy when you're done." Hence, Yun Shishir was in a hurry to leave. Yun Tianyu pouted and said aggrievedly, "Mommy, don't go. I don't feel anything after you leave." Yun Shishir fell silent. "What does it feel like to poop?" He explained matter-of-factly, "It's a feeling of security." Yun Shishir, what was the meaning of this? After mommy left, Yu became restless. Yu is afraid of being alone. He was quite good at using idioms. Most importantly, she had never seen him so clingy. In the past, not to mention going to the bathroom, he could even go to school alone. Why now? Yun Shishir, on the other hand, was a meticulous person. She found it strange for a moment, but she quickly figured out what he was thinking. Hence, she squatted down and calmly looked into his eyes. Yun Tianyu looked at her, too, only to be stunned by her odd expression and the teasing look in her eyes. "Mommy, what's wrong?" Let me guess." Yun Shishir asked casually. "Is my little Yu jealous?" She guessed it right away. Yun Tianyu kept quiet and did not say a word. He still felt a little awkward in his heart. Yun Shishir saw him lowering his head in silence and knew that she had guessed correctly. Hence, she cupped his little face and kissed his pouting lips. Her warm lips planted a soft kiss on his lips. Yun Tianyu's face quickly turned red from shyness. "Mommy, Yu, do you know? He's your older brother." "I know," Yun Tianyu said slowly. "He's my older brother. We have the same father and mommy." Yun Shishir was a little surprised to hear that. So, he knew all about it? She was quite surprised. Chapter 461. That's right. The two children should know when they meet. Children's minds can be very delicate and sensitive at times. Yun Shishir caressed his head and guided him patiently. "That's why you two should get along well." But his brows furrowed as he struggled internally. He knew that he was a little selfish and perhaps a little narrow-minded. Initially, he wanted to generously give half of his mommy's love to Mui Chen, but when he really did so, he was conflicted and reluctant to do so. This was especially so when he saw how gentle Yun Shishir was to Mui Chen. His heart felt a little sour and stuffy. There was a lump of pent-up anger in his heart that could not be vented or dissipated. He felt very upset. He could not really share his mommy's love with Mui Chen. Yun Shishir's heart clenched when she saw his aggrieved and upset expression. She then asked, "But what?" "But, mommy, Yu loves you, and mommy loves Yu, too. That Mui Chen, doesn't he have his daddy? It's enough that he has his daddy's love. Why does he have to fight with Yu for mommy? He's not fighting with you for mommy." Yu's face suddenly showed an unprecedented panic and uneasiness. He grabbed Yun Shishir's hand and held it tightly in his palm. "But he's clearly fighting with Yu. Mommy belongs to Yu. You must remember that mommy isn't yours," Yun Shishir patiently corrected him. Yu's eyes widened slightly. The focus in his eyes instantly became unfocused, and soon, dense ripples appeared in his eyes. Yin Shishir's words were undoubtedly like a sharp sword that pierced his heart painfully. Wasn't Mommy his? The moment he recalled what his mother had said to him, he felt as if the sky had collapsed. His eyes were empty and his face was blank. A crystal-clear teardrop rolled down his cheek. Yin Shishir frowned. Her heart ached because of the sadness in his eyes. However, there were some things that she had to tell him even though he was still young. Mommy isn't a thing. She shouldn't be Yu Yu's private property. But you have to understand that Mommy loves you. However, Yu was still feeling very sad. The sound that came out of her throat was choked and broken. Her thick and long eyelashes were wet with tears, making her look even more pitiful. But Yu loves Mommy. I hope that Mommy's love is only for Yu and not for anyone else. Yu, Mommy loves you and dotes on you the most. You should be able to feel it, right? Yin Shishir was a little anxious as she pressed his hand against her chest. Through the fabric of her clothes, he could feel her warm heartbeat. Mui Chen, he's your older brother. Both of you are Mommy's flesh and blood. Both of you were born in the same year, month, and day. Yu, do you know that? When you were born, your older brother was healthy, but you were always sick. That's right. How unfair is that? Hearing this, Yun Tianyu felt a little aggrieved, but he did not show it on his face. Instead, he said enviously, that's right. How unfair is that? Since he was young, he had always envied healthy children. Every minute and every second of the pain and torture of being sick was torture. When he was younger, he spent most of his time in the hospital. When he opened his eyes, it was a snow-white world. When he slept, it was endless darkness. Chapter 462. When he opened his eyes, he was greeted by a snow-white world. Even in his dreams, he was surrounded by endless darkness. The smell of disinfectant was something he hated the most. The sunlight he saw was mostly when he stood in front of the hospital window and looked at it. He could still vaguely remember that outside the hospital's window was a huge field of green grass. Many children who came to visit the patient were running and playing on the grass. They were holding hydrogen balloons in their hands as they chased each other. In a moment of carelessness, the balloon flew out of his hand and flew high into the sky. He held his head and watched in a daze as the balloon flew until it disappeared into the horizon and could no longer be seen. This was probably one of the few pleasures he had at that time. Yin Shishir saw that his face was a little pale and knew that he had recalled something sad. Yu knew that he was in poor health. He also wanted to play, but the doctor had warned her not to let him run too much. Otherwise, it would lead to a lack of blood supply to the heart, breathing difficulties, and in severe cases, shock. She rarely let him go out to play with other children. Most of the time, she accompanied him to play puzzle games. Under Yin Shishir's meticulous care, his health gradually improved. Yin Shishir smiled faintly. You can't think of it that way, though. Mommy has been separated from him for 6 years, so the love that should be given to you too was given to you. Yin Tianyu was startled. Was that so? Was he the one who had Mui Chen's love? Yin Shishir continued, today, you told Mommy that brother saved you. Yu nodded in a daze. Indeed, it was Mui Chen who saved him. If not for him, the consequences would be unimaginable. Moreover, he knew very well that the assassin was obviously targeting him. On the way to the hospital, he repeatedly pondered over this matter and found it very fishy. Even though he told Yin Shishir that he was tired and wanted to sleep for a while. His mind was filled with thoughts of this matter the moment he closed his eyes. There were many suspicious points. Yin Shishir, of course, did not know what was going through Yin Tianyu's mind. She added, Mommy finds it unbelievable, too. Big brother is so awesome. He saved my Yu. Mommy is very grateful to him. Aren't you grateful? Regaining his senses, Yun Tianyu immediately replied, of course, I'm grateful. He saved me, so I'll do whatever he wants me to do. Yu is so sensible. Yin Shishir kissed his forehead in relief. Yun Tianyu was a little conflicted. I can't cede Mommy's love to him, though. Mommy, Yu loves you. Yun Shusher emphasized seriously. Hearing that, the boy pursed his lips and nodded. Mommy loves you. You can feel it. Mommy loves you, but I also love him. But that doesn't mean that you've lost your mommy. You also have your brother's favor, don't you? Yun Tianyu was stunned for a moment before he fell into deep thought. After pondering over this sentence for a while, he quickly understood what Yun Shusher wanted to express to him. Needless to say, he was a smart child and quickly figured out this problem. Therefore, he would not make things difficult for Yun Shusher. It was just that he still needed some time to accept Mu Yichen. Yun Tianyu walked out of the bathroom and quietly returned to the bed. Chapter 463. Yun Shusher followed behind him. She sighed helplessly when she saw him climb into bed alone and tidy up the blanket to cover himself. She knew that he had straightened out his thinking, but he still needed time to get to the bottom of it. It was indeed a little harsh for him to accept another child and share her motherly love with him all of a sudden. Yu had always been sensible and obedient, so Yun Shusher sat back on the bed and asked gently, Yu, do you want to drink some hot water? Yes, I do. Yu pursed his lips. Yun Shusher hummed in acknowledgement and picked up the thermos beside her. Before leaving the room, Yun Shusher specially reminded Xiao Yichen, help me take care of Yu. Mu Yichen glanced at Yun Tianyu and nodded obediently. Yun Shusher then left the room. Just as the door closed, Yun Tianyu sat up from the bed abruptly. Xiao Yichen was startled. Seeing his gloomy face, he hurriedly asked, What's wrong? It's very suspicious. What do you mean? Mu Yichen was a little confused by his abrupt words and did not immediately understand what he meant. Yun Tianyu's eyes were deep and cold. He suddenly turned to look at him and asked, When did you find out about that man? Yes. Are you talking about the man who was chasing after us? Mu Yichen raised a brow. Seeing that Yun Tianyu was talking about that man, he immediately replied, After we entered the haunted house. Didn't he see you? He saw me. Then, why did you say that his target was me? This matter was too suspicious. In the haunted house, he and Xiao Yichen looked exactly the same, especially in the dark. If that man had followed them from the haunted house, he should have seen Xiao Yichen. Yun Tianyu remembered that Xiao Yichen was carrying a panda at that time, but he was not. If that man's target was Xiao Yichen, then it would be easy to identify him from his clothes. Unless he was not the only one who was targeting him. Many thoughts flashed through his mind. Yun Tianyu had already thought of many possibilities, but he dismissed them one by one. Mu Yichen did not know what was on his mind and only said solemnly, That's because his target was very clear from the start. I don't know when that man started following you guys. At least, before we entered the haunted house, he was already following us. At the time, the panda I was carrying was so conspicuous. After entering the haunted house, I noticed that someone was following behind me, so I dropped the panda on the ground. He didn't even look at it and just walked past, which means that his target wasn't me. Then, he. Halfway through his words, Yun Tianyu's pupils violently constricted, and his voice instantly turned cold. I understand now. What do you understand? Mu Yichen's curiosity was piqued by his words. Perhaps, that man's target wasn't just me. Yun Tianyu suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Perhaps, that man's target was him and his mommy from the start. Fortunately, his mommy was separated from them in the haunted house. As his biggest target, that man naturally wanted to get rid of him first. Thinking deeper, he could not help but feel a little terrified. His phone rang all of a sudden. He picked it up and saw that it was a call from Li Hanlin. He picked it up. Hello? Director Yun, are you at the hospital? Chapter 464. His voice sounded wary. Yun Tianyu immediately got off the bed and walked to the window. Lowering his voice, he answered, Yes, I'm here. How's your injury? Is it serious? Li Hanlan's tone was anxious as he asked with concern. Forgive me for not being able to visit you at the hospital right away. It's all right, it's nothing serious. Yun Tianyu paused for a moment before changing the topic. How's that matter of yours? Yes. I've caught the culprit, but according to the surveillance footage, there are 2 of them. There's still one left. His voice got softer as he spoke, afraid that Yun Tianyu would reprimand him for his incompetence. Yun Tianyu's tone suddenly turned gloomy. How did you do your job? Li Hanlan held the phone in his hand with tears streaming down his face. He knew it. He had done his best, though. Where is he? Yun Tianyu calmed himself down and asked. Since he had caught the culprit, he must not hand him over to the police. He must force the culprit to reveal the ins and outs of the matter. Li Hanlan immediately replied respectfully, the culprit has been detained in a warehouse in the suburbs and is under heavy guard. However, he's been very tight-lipped and won't say anything. Oh. Yun Tianyu frowned and his lips curled into a sinister smile. Won't say anything? Yes. We've taken precautions to ensure his safety. Yun Tianyu praised, yes. You've done well. You'll get a raise this month. What a rare and precious gift. Li Hanlan was immediately moved to tears. Thank you, Director Yun. You've finally given me a raise. The family can barely afford to eat. Yun Tianyu frowned in disdain. He looked out of the window and was lost in thought for a moment. Suddenly, he made a decision in his heart. He won't say anything, huh? Yes. We've tried everything. This guy is very tight-lipped and won't divulge anything. We found a poison sac in his mouth. Poison sac? Yun Tianyu frowned. What's that? Director Yun, this person is a professional assassin. The poison sac is in his mouth. Once he bit it open, he committed suicide by drinking the poison. Li Hanlan explained. Yun Tianyu felt a chill run down his spine. This method was too ruthless. After a while, he said, come pick me up tonight. I'll interrogate him personally. President Yun, I don't think that's a good idea. Li Hanlan asked in surprise. Just do what I say. Don't doubt me. With that, he hung up. When he turned around, Mu Yichen was still leaning against the bed. He was quite a distance away, so he could not clearly hear the conversation between Yun Tianyu and Li Hanlan over the phone. However, he was keenly aware of the change in Yun Tianyu's aura the moment he picked up the call. Cold, austere, and aggressive. The moment he got off the bed and walked toward the window, Mu Yichen caught sight of Yun Tianyu's incomparably cold and dark eyes. He was a completely different person from the naive and romantic look he had in front of Yun Xianxia. He had witnessed Yun Tianyu's calmness before. When the Ferris wheel malfunctioned, if it were any other child, they would have been scared to tears. However, he didn't. Instead, he calmly made a phone call and then sat down patiently. Even after falling out of the carriage, although there was a moment of panic on his face, he quickly calmed down. He had never seen such a frightening look in a child's eyes before, though. Yun Tianyu looked at Mu Yichen. His heart was in a dilemma. Should he tell him about this matter? After hesitating for a moment, he decided to hide it from him. He would handle this matter well without anyone's interference. Thus, he lay back on the bed. Chapter 465. When Wuxia and Song Enya returned to the ward one after another, the rest of the Song family rushed over one after another. Song Xianxia was now the apple of the Song family's eye, a little princess who was doted on. Upon hearing that something had happened to her, Song Xianxia and Jiang Qimeng hurried over. In the ward, Song Xianxia was still crying non-stop. When she saw that her brother and mother had arrived, her coquettish skills became even more powerful. She kept throwing tantrums in Jiang Qimeng's arms. Her face was wet with tears, and her eyes were red and swollen. Jiang Qimeng's heart ached terribly. When she saw that a piece of hair at the back of Song Xianxia's head had been shaved off and that the wound had been stitched up and was still bleeding, her heart ached so much that her eyes moistened. Song Yunxi stood at the side and kept coaxing her. He loved this younger sister of his from the bottom of his heart. Ever since she was born, he had given her the greatest love. However, he was usually busy with work and could not take care of this younger sister of his. Hence, the little girl did not appreciate his coaxing. Jiang Qimen kept coaxing her, but Song Yunxi did not give in to her. There was nothing Jiang Qimen and Song Yunxi could do. When Song Yunxi saw that Mu Yaja had arrived, she immediately wanted to break free from Jiang Qimen's embrace and spread her arms and legs toward him. "Uncle Mu, hug me. Uncle Mu, hug me." When she saw Mu Yaja, Jiang Qimen did feel some resentment toward him. However, the Muse and the Songs were on good terms and had been friends for hundreds of years. Hence, even though she had a lot of complaints, she still maintained a very polite expression on the surface. After all, she could not make things too awkward. Otherwise, both families would not be able to show their faces. They had to give each other face. Hence, Jiang Qimen said politely, "Yaja, you're here?" Aunt Jiang." Mu Yaja called out. Song Yunxi also called out unnaturally, "Uncle." "Mu." "Yes," Mu Yaja responded, as if he didn't see the awkward expression on Song Yunxi's face. Song Yunxi was only 4 years older than him, but Mu Yaja was older than him. For the proud and arrogant Song Yunxi, calling him Uncle Mu was a bit awkward. While Jiang Qimen wasn't paying attention, Song Yunxi jumped off her body and snuggled into Mu Yaja's arms. Mu Yaja had no choice but to carry her in his arms. His feelings towards Song Yunxi were rather complicated right now. She was more concerned about Xiao Yichen. She had been waiting for his call, but he hadn't called yet. Was the little fellow still angry with him? Song Yunxi squirmed restlessly in his arms. It was obvious that she had been wronged and wanted his comfort. But right now, he didn't have the mood to deal with this little fellow's coquetry. Song Yunxi stared at his side profile dejectedly, her face full of grievance. Jiang Qimen looked a little embarrassed and smiled. "Aya. Look at this child. She's injured, yet she's still so restless. Still, I don't know why and she especially likes to stick to you." Mu Yaja patted her head but didn't say anything. Song Enya chimed in from the side. "Yes, and she likes Uncle Mu the most, right?" Song Yunxi immediately said cheerfully, "Yes, yes. And she likes Uncle Mu the most. And she likes Uncle Mu the most." With that, she leaned her head sweetly into Mu Yaja's arms. Mu Yaja coldly curled his lips. From start to finish, he looked a little absent-minded. Chapter 466. The corners of Mu Yaja's lips curled up coldly. From the beginning to the end, he looked a little absent-minded. For a moment, the atmosphere was inevitably a little awkward. Song Enya also felt extremely awkward. Thinking of the things she should not have said to Mu Yaja earlier, she did not know how to smooth things over for a moment. Jiang Qimen laughed awkwardly, but she was extremely unhappy inside. Today was supposed to be Children's Day, so she had asked Song Enya to bring Song Yunxi to the amusement park for a day of fun. It could also be considered a happy Children's Day for the children, but the latter ended up injured and lying in the hospital. She had roughly heard the whole story from Song Enya. She did not explain it clearly over the phone, but Song Enya pushed all the blame to Xiao Yichen. But in reality, Song Enya was also responsible for this. She was the one who brought Song Yunxi out, so she was considered the child's guardian and parent. How could she not be responsible for the child's injury? At that time, Mu Yaja said that he was going to the dessert station, so she should have stayed behind to take care of the 2 children. However, out of selfishness, she wanted to have some privacy with Mu Yaja, so she went with him, leaving the 2 5-year-old children behind. Since something had happened, she simply pushed the blame to Mu Yichen. Perhaps she was used to being spoiled since young, or perhaps this was a common problem of Missy. She always felt that she was not in the wrong and had no sense of responsibility. However, she did not think that if she had stayed behind to take care of the children, would such an incident have happened? When she told Jiang Qimen about this matter, she only said that Mu Yichen had pushed her and did not mention that Song Yunxi had bitten Mu Yichen at all. He recounted the entire incident out of context. Of course, Jiang Qimeng believed that it was his son who had been mischievous and pushed Song and Shi from start to finish. Therefore, when Mu Yaja sat there with a cold expression and an absent-minded look, Jiang Qimeng was more or less displeased. Her child was injured. There was a deep cut on the back of her head that required 3 stitches, and a piece of her hair was shaved off. She did not know if the cut would grow back in the future. The child had never experienced such hardships since he was young. Logically speaking, as Mu Yichen's mother, Mu Yaja should also be responsible. Anyone with a bit of responsibility wouldn't have such a cold expression. However, even though she was displeased, she did not dare to voice her displeasure. Although the Song family is a prestigious family in the capital, and with Old Master Song's status, they are still far from the Mu family's influence. Therefore, the Song family had to give the Mu family face no matter what. Even so, Jiang Qimeng still felt a little uncomfortable. Hence, she glared at Song and Shi and said, "Uncle Mu is tired. Get off me. Why do you always like to stick to me?" Song and Shi snorted. "I don't want that. I like Uncle Mu. Haven't you suffered enough?" Jiang Qimeng was a little anxious and scolded, "You're really disobedient." Sob sob. "Mommy yelled at me." Song and Shi's little face scrunched up as tears streamed down her cheeks. "Mom, and she likes Brother Mu. Just let her go," Song Enya said from the side. Mu Yaja suddenly put Song and Shi down and stood up. He was still worried about Mu Yichen. It was getting late, and Fairy Tale Valley would be closed soon. Chapter 467. Even if it was a punishment, it should end here. Even if Mu Yichen did not call to sincerely apologize, he had already lost his patience. Seeing that he was about to leave, Song Enya immediately went up to him and asked, "Brother Mu, where are you going?" "I'm going to pick up the children," Mu Yaja curtly replied. Jiang Qimeng picked up Song and Shi and suddenly said, "Yaja, there's something that I must remind you of. Boys can't be spoiled. This sense of responsibility must be nurtured from a young age. Take my Yinshi for example. He was also mischievous when he was young and caused trouble everywhere. However, I've told him since he was young that a man must be responsible. If he made a mistake, he should bear the consequences himself. Naturally, the Songs won't pursue this matter. However, I still hope that Mu Yichen can come and apologize to my Enshi." Mu Yaja's back view paused. In an instant, he exuded a sharp aura. He slowly turned around, but the expression on his face was even colder. "How to discipline my son is my family's matter. It's not up to the Songs to interfere." Jiang Qimeng's expression turned ugly. Song Yinshi could not bear to listen to this and said unhappily, "Uncle Mu, what do you mean by this? The Songs have already given us enough face after this incident. Now, they just want Mu Yichen to apologize, sure." Mu Yaja coldly interrupted her. Song Yinshi was stunned. Jiang Qimeng's face immediately revealed a gratified smile. Then, can Enshi also ask Xiao Yichen to apologize to him for biting Xiao Yichen? Jiang Qimeng's smile instantly froze at the corner of her mouth. "What do you mean?" "What do I mean? You should ask your daughter," Mu Yaja said and left the ward. Everyone was left looking at each other. Song Enya walked up to Song and Shi and asked coldly, "What exactly happened today?" Song and Shi raised her head and looked at her with teary eyes. She was probably most afraid of Song Enya at home. She knew that she had made a mistake, and more importantly, she had made Uncle Mu unhappy. While feeling wronged, he also felt a little regretful. Furious, the Missy hollered, "Say something. What the hell is going on? Why did Mu Yichen push you?" Song and Shi burst into tears after being yelled at by her. Song Yunshi's heart ached. She immediately stepped forward and said, "The child is still young. Don't be so fierce to her. Brother, you're always spoiling her. Look at her, how willful has she become?" She glared at him and lowered her head to threaten him. "Uncle Mu won't like you if you don't behave yourself. Woo woo. It's all Mu Yichen's fault. He didn't let me look at his watch, and he even snatched Uncle Mu away from me. Sob sob. He even said that I was ugly, so I was so angry that I bit him, just once, sob sob. She sobbed and wept as she recounted the whole story. It turned out that Mu Yichen really did not use much force when he pushed her. She had deliberately pretended to be pushed so that she could complain to Uncle Mu when the time came. She did not expect that she would fall on the stairs and hit the back of her head, resulting in this disaster. This time, Jiang Qimeng's face turned white with anger. She picked up her daughter's little hand and slapped it hard. Why didn't you tell Mommy earlier? I was afraid that Mommy would scold me. Woo woo woo. Her phone suddenly rang. Chapter 468. Song Enya looked in the direction of the voice and saw that Muyaja's phone had slipped out of his pocket while he was sitting on the sofa. She picked it up. Initially, she did not want to pick it up, but when she saw the picture of a woman sleeping on the screen, she realized that the caller ID was a picture of a woman. In the picture, the woman's face was elegant and refined. Even though she was sleeping without makeup, she was still beautiful beyond compare. Her messy hair was scattered on the pillow. Against her snow-white skin, it was messy, but it did not diminish her beauty at all. The caller ID was only one word, sure. This was Muyaja's phone. She should not have picked up the call. However, when she looked at the photo on the caller ID, her imagination started to run wild. For some reason, she actually picked up the phone. Xianxia went to the nurse's station to ask where the hot water room was. The nurse was busy, so she did not answer her seriously. She searched for it for a long time, but she could not find it. She was about to return to the ward when she suddenly remembered that Xiao Yichen needed to be hospitalized. Should she call Muyaja? She was too nervous when she sent the two children to the hospital outside the emergency room. After that, she was busy taking care of the two little guys. She was in a mess. Now that she suddenly remembered that she should contact Muyaja to come to the hospital. Even if there was a misunderstanding between father and son, they should communicate in time, right? Thus, she took out her phone and dialed a number. The phone rang a few times before it was picked up. On the other end, a woman's sharp and somewhat targeted voice asked, "Who are you?" Xianxia was stunned. The woman on the other end was obviously a little impatient. "Speak. Hello, is Muyaja there?" The woman gritted her teeth and said, "No." Then, she hung up the phone. Xianxia was stunned for a moment. She laughed at herself, but her heart ached. She thought that he must be very busy or was giving the children a punishment. In fact, he was very concerned about the children, but she called to tell him that Xiao Yichen was in the hospital and to come over to take care of the children. She did not expect a woman to pick up the phone. What was the meaning of this? Xianxia was a little angry. She felt sorry for Xiao Yichen. Previously, she had thought that Muyaja was a responsible father, but now, she had to put a question mark in her heart. It's fine if you don't come. Who he was with had nothing to do with her. He didn't care about the children. She would take care of them. She was more than happy to take care of the child. As for him, what did he have to do with her? As she thought about this, she stood at the elevator door and waited to return to the ward. The elevator took a long time to arrive. The floor of the ward was high, so it took a while to get to the elevator. Suddenly, a hurried voice called out from behind him, "Brother Mu." She furrowed her brows and turned her head to take a look. Now that she thought about it, she shouldn't have turned back at that time. She wouldn't have caused a series of problems because of that scene. However, this was a story for another time. She turned around and saw Muyaja walking down the stairs, followed by a woman with a hurried expression. At first, the man did not seem to be in the mood to respond to her call. He walked down the stairs without looking back. Until the woman called out, "You left your phone with me. Don't you want it?" Muyaja stopped in his tracks and turned around. Song Enya immediately chased after him with a smile. Xianxia originally wanted to walk over when she saw him, but when she heard the woman's words, her heart skipped a beat. Muyaja's phone was with her? Was she the woman who had spoken sarcastically to her over the phone earlier? Chapter 469. For a moment, he froze on the spot. Song Enya walked up to Wuxia with a smile. The tender smile on her face made Wuxia a little dazed. He seemed to see the shadow of his mother when she was young in her. For a moment, he was stunned and could not react. Song Enya took out her phone. Wuxia reached out to take it, but she playfully put it away and carried it behind her back. Her mischievous look was just like when she was with him when they were young. "Brother Mu, don't be angry with me." Wuxia was stunned, but he did not say a word. The anger in his heart was greatly reduced by this smile that resembled his mother's. Song Enya knew that the man's cold expression was a sign of anger, so she reached out and hugged his shoulders. Acting coquettishly, she said, "Brother Mu, I'm sorry. I went overboard with my words just now. Perhaps, today's matter was indeed a misunderstanding. I shouldn't have said that. I didn't mean to say that. Please forgive me, okay? Please." Song Enya acted coquettishly. Wuxia had been indulging her since they were young. Sometimes, when she went overboard and angered him, she would coax him like this and beg for his forgiveness. This trick was tried and tested. Sure enough, Wuxia's expression improved a lot. "Yes. You're really not angry anymore?" Song Enya smiled in surprise and raised her head to look at his expression. She saw that his ice-cold expression had softened a little. Song Enya knew that he was no longer angry, and her heart was overjoyed. "Thank you, Brother Mu. Brother Mu, when you go back today, you must apologize to Xiao Yichen on my and Enshi's behalf. I didn't fulfill my responsibility as an elder sister today, so I feel guilty toward Xiao Yichen. Tell him that I'll definitely apologize to him with Enshi next time. Go up." Wuxia did not say much. He just reached out and patted her head lovingly, urging her to go upstairs to the ward. Song Enya nodded and handed the phone to him before reluctantly heading upstairs. Wuxia took the phone and was about to leave when he caught sight of a familiar figure from the corner of his eye. His expression froze as he turned his head, only to see Xianxia standing at the elevator entrance with a hot water bottle in her hand. Her eyes were fixed on him the whole time. His face, however, was cold enough to make one's heart palpitate. Xianxia looked at him coldly. Her eyes, however, were still. It was as if her heart was as dead as ashes, there was not a single ripple in it. She did not know why, but when she saw Song Enya hugging Wuxia earlier, the look of indulgence on the man's face inadvertently made her heart bleed profusely as if it had been sliced open by a razor blade. If she hadn't seen this scene with her own eyes, she wouldn't have known that this man actually had such a gentle side. Would he show such a doting and indulgent expression to a woman? Song Enya threw herself into his arms, but he did not push her away. The indulgence on his face undoubtedly pierced her heart. She did not care who this woman was or what her status was. She did not care about their relationship, nor why Wuxia did not appear in Xiao Yichen's ward when he was in the hospital. Instead, he appeared at the staircase with an unfamiliar woman. What she cared about was what position Xiao Yichen had in this man's heart. Chapter 470. So, those gentle gazes that he had shown her before were nothing more than an illusion? Was he just putting on an act? Was this woman the one he liked? So, what was she? Xianxia was a little confused, and her mind was in a mess. However, that wasn't what made her heart turn cold at this moment. Instead, it was the fact that Xiao Yichen was still lying in the ward, feeling sad because of his heartlessness. Yet, he was still here, hugging a woman. When Wuxia saw her standing there, an inexplicable sense of panic flashed across his face, but he quickly suppressed it. He didn't know how much she had seen or heard. He also didn't know what this stupid woman was thinking as she stared at him motionlessly. Thus, he asked, "Why are you here?" They weren't far apart, and the man's voice was powerful and resonant. However, she acted as if she hadn't heard him and turned around. When the elevator doors opened, she stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for her floor, intending to return to the ward. Wuxia saw that she ignored him and didn't respond to his question. She only minded her own business and walked into the elevator. In a fit of anger, he strode over to the elevator. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, he reached out and forcefully blocked the doors from closing. His hand was viciously caught between the doors. Yun Shishir was shocked, but she saw the elevator doors open again. The man strode in and stood in front of her with a condescending look on his face. What do you mean? She was baffled by his question. What do you mean by, what do you mean? I don't know what you're talking about. I asked you, why are you here? You ignored me and turned around to enter the elevator. What do you mean by that? Wuxia was enraged by her indifference. When the elevator doors closed, he took a step forward and forced her into a corner. Yun Shishir wasn't shocked or angry. Her face was calm as if her heart had died. Instead of answering, she asked, am I not supposed to be here? Or am I interrupting you flirting with another woman? If that's the case, then I'm really sorry. Her sarcastic tone caused the man's face to instantly turn cold. Flirting? What are you thinking about all day long? Flirting? Xianxia was his cousin. It was just a hug between siblings, so how could she call it flirting? If they weren't in public, he really wanted to teach this woman a lesson. Yun Shishir said indifferently, I don't want to know anything. Who she is, what's your relationship, and what you're doing, I'm not interested. Her cold words were so harsh to the ears. What did he mean by she wasn't interested in knowing? What did she know? What did he know? Wuxia didn't know why she suddenly went crazy. He suddenly thought of something and the corners of his mouth curled up in a mischievous arc. He asked, jealous? No. Why would I be jealous? She calmly denied. Wuxia's smile froze and his face darkened. Her nonchalant attitude made him really unhappy. Then what are you angry about? Or, in your eyes, am I not worthy of your trust? Looking at him, she was reminded of Xiao Yichen's sad face and the frightening scene that happened at the amusement park today. She thought of how the Ferris wheel had malfunctioned and how the two children had almost met with an accident. Then, she recalled the scene of Xianxia and Wuxia hugging. Now that she looked at his face again, she suddenly felt that the scene just now was too glaring. She felt a little sour in her heart. Today is Xiao Yichen's birthday. Even if there's a misunderstanding between father and son, should he just leave the child alone at the amusement park? If this is a punishment, don't you think it's too much? Chapter 471. How could he not know that something had happened to Xiao Yichen? He was Wuxia's father. At that thought, Yun Shishir felt a chill run down her spine. I originally thought that you were a responsible father, she suddenly said. Wuxia was stunned. Her strange words had caught him off guard. She continued coldly, I don't know what position Xiao Yichen has in your heart, but I'm very disappointed in you. Her words had infuriated him. What did she mean by accusing him without distinguishing between right and wrong? Was it because he had spoiled her too much that she had become arrogant because of that? Woman, have I indulged you too much? Although Wuxia tried his best to control himself, he still couldn't stop himself from grabbing her shoulders tightly. His fingers tightened around her shoulders. Her words had undoubtedly offended him, so he sneered, you have no right to judge what kind of father I am. No right? Yun Shishir stared at him in a daze for a long time. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and she suddenly mocked him. This mocking remark was his excessive concern for her. Yes, she had no right. He was right. What right did she have to criticize him? 6 years ago, she was the one who gave up Xiao Yichen's custody, wasn't she? She wasn't a good mother to begin with. She was the one who gave up her child's custody. Therefore, what right did she have to criticize Wuxia for being irresponsible? She had no right to criticize him. She really had no right to do so. Even so, when she thought of Xiao Yichen's heart-wrenching disappointed expression, her heart ached. I have no right? Then do you have the right? Yun Shishir gritted her teeth and said, I know that I don't have custody of Xiao Yichen. In name, I'm not Xiao Yichen's mother. I was the one who gave up my child's custody. But Wuxia Xianxia is also my flesh and blood. I won't cause you any trouble regarding his custody. I'm just disappointed that when Xianxia got into trouble, where were you? Xianxia got into trouble? What happened? Wuxia's heart skipped a beat. He was confused. What happened to him? Don't you think it's too late for you to ask now? She said bitterly, if you don't know how to take care of him, I can take care of him. The child was still young and insensible. Of all the things he should do, shouldn't the father and son communicate properly? Even if there's a huge misunderstanding, there's nothing that's not clear. Is there a need to leave him there alone? The more she thought about it, the more furious she became. I don't know whether your heart is warm or not, she said, questioning him. Today is the child's birthday, but what did you do? Wuxia only felt frustrated. This stupid woman was condemning him righteously. He didn't care, but he cared about what happened to Xianxia, but she didn't say anything. Wasn't the child in the amusement park? What could have happened? He had arranged for him to receive training in the special forces since he was young. Whether it was survival in the wild or various subjects, Xianxia's results were amazing. That was why he was relieved to leave him alone in the amusement park. Didn't he want to play? Then what would happen if he let the child have fun in the amusement park? Chapter 472. Xianxia sneered. You said that I don't have the right to ask, then let me ask you, what am I in your heart? What right do I have? Even if I don't even have the right to ask, what am I in your eyes? You can summon me at your beck and call. You can tease me when you're in a good mood, and humiliate me when you're in a bad mood, right? Wuxia said coldly, shut up. His gaze was as sharp as a knife as it pierced her body. He felt that she was being too presumptuous with her words. Was there a need for her to make such guesses about what he thought of her? Xianxia's heart turned even colder after being yelled at by him. I originally thought that you'd be cold to everyone, but, halfway through her words, she recalled the doting and indulgent side of this man toward Song Enya, and a part of her heart suddenly collapsed. She suddenly felt a little ashamed. Towards this man, she actually had a damnable heart. Now that her heart had given up, it was all over. I'm sorry, I was thinking too much. The elevator doors opened when it reached her floor. She turned around and left without looking back. Back in the ward, she began to pack her things. Yu could not help feeling puzzled when he saw her pale face. Mommy, what's wrong? Why were you gone for so long? Xianxia did not want him to see the loss of composure on her face as she packed her things with her back facing him. She was very upset and felt a stabbing pain in her heart. Yu and Xianxia looked at each other, completely clueless about what had happened. Yu did not have a lot of things, only a small backpack and some personal belongings. Xianxia walked to Yu's bed and said, Yu, let me take you home. Yu nodded. Xianxia sat up nervously when he heard this. He looked at Xianxia, who had a strange expression on her face, and asked uneasily, Are you leaving? He could not bear to leave her. He should have called his daddy when he was admitted to the hospital. However, for some reason, he did not want to call him. There was anger in it, but more than that, he wanted to spend more time with her. Seeing that she was about to leave, he suddenly felt a little flustered. What? What about me? Wuxia had already entered the ward. Just as he stepped into the ward, he saw the little lads with different injuries on the two beds. His face sank, and he frowned. When he saw Wuxia's call, he opened his mouth and wanted to call him, daddies, but when the word, he wanted to call. He did not want to talk. There were some things to this day. It was supposed to be a happy birthday, but now it was like this. He was angry, so he didn't want to talk to him. What's going on? Wuxia asked after a moment of shock, too. Xianxia ignored him, too. Tianyu looked at Xianxia's expression and then at the man. He was sensitive enough to know that this man must have angered his mommy again, so he ignored him even more. He gave Wuxia a bad review in his heart. Lousy. People who make mommy angry are the worst. Unforgivable. Yun Shishir decided to leave with Yu Yu. Yu Yu's injuries were not serious. As his elder brother, Xiao Yichen had always been responsible for protecting him, so his injuries were not serious. Chapter 473. Although this child had never called her mommy, that sense of closeness was irreplaceable by the word mommy. Feeling helpless, Yun Shishir walked to his bedside and said gently, "Yichen, Mom. Auntie is leaving. You have to be well, okay?" Little Yichen's heart ached. He opened his mouth, wanting to persuade her to stay, but no matter what, he could not bring himself to do so. He felt that he had no say in this. Xiao Yichen lowered his head dejectedly. His eyes were filled with reluctance, sadness, and even attachment. However, the little guy was afraid that Yun Shishir would make things difficult for him, so he hid it well. From start to finish, he did not say anything. Yun Shishir's heart ached when she saw him in such a despondent state. She wanted to reach out and caress his face, but Mu Yaja was present. Recalling his words earlier, her heart turned cold. Thus, she retracted her hand, picked up Yu Yu, and left. When he brushed past Mu Yaja, Yun Tianyu looked at Mu Yaja with chilling eyes. Mu Yaja did not turn back to ask him to stay. When he walked to the bedside, he saw Xiao Yichen staring blankly at Yun Shishir's departure. For a moment, he was so sad that he almost suffocated. Seeing the mother and son disappear from the door of the ward, he couldn't help but flip over and get off the bed. He didn't care about his injured hand and stumbled to the door. But at this moment, he stopped in his tracks. Leaning against the door, he watched Yun Shishir and Yun Tianyu enter the elevator. When the elevator door closed, it was as if the sky had collapsed. Xiao Yichen mumbled, "Mommy," tears fell from his eyes in a daze. He kept feeling that her departure had left a huge hole in his heart that couldn't be filled no matter how hard he tried. Mu Yaja went to the door and picked him up. Looking at his bandaged arm, he raised his eyebrows slightly and asked in a deep voice, "What happened to your hand?" He didn't know what had happened today. He thought that the children were playing in the amusement park and the machine had malfunctioned. However, little Yichen turned his head away, not wanting to bother with him. She felt a little guilty towards him. She shouldn't have left him alone in the amusement park. But at that time, the situation was urgent. At that time, he was a little worried about Song and Shi's injury. He was not in the mood to ask which child was at fault. These were all trivial matters. He was only anxious to send the child to the hospital. This was also his responsibility, wasn't it? But he stubbornly refused to leave. He tried to pick up Xiao Yichen by force, but the child pushed him away and threw a tantrum. He simply left him there and let him play to his heart's content. When he was young, when he was willful, his father also punished him in the same way. Perhaps he didn't think that there was anything wrong with it, but if it hurt the child, it was an unintentional mistake. Now, he was very regretful. He felt guilty towards the child, so he took a step back, which was rare of him. "It's Daddy's fault. It's Daddy's fault. I shouldn't have left you there. Are you willing to forgive Daddy?" "I'm not willing." Xiao Yichen replied awkwardly and ignored him. His mind was filled with the sad expression on Yun Shishir's face when she left. He missed her a little. They had just parted not long ago, but he was already missing her. He missed her gently feeding him tiramisu and her warm embrace when she hugged him. His tears suddenly burst out uncontrollably. He rarely cried, in fact, he almost never cried. Chapter 474. On the way back to the Mu residence, Xiao Yichen was so angry that he did not utter a word. He did not mention a word about what had happened that day. Mu Yaja tried to hug him a few times, but he avoided him without a word. Mu Yaja tried coaxing and asking, but the little lad refused to fall for his tricks. Neither soft nor hard methods worked on him. He was at his wit's end. If he did not answer, he would find out the truth himself. In fact, Yun Tianyu and Xiao Yichen had reached an agreement to keep what had happened that day a secret. Yun Tianyu had repeatedly told him not to tell anyone about it, not even Muyaja. Little Li Chen obeyed his father's words and kept this matter a secret. Even if Muyaja wanted to find out the truth, he should not think about who owned Fairy Tale Valley. Even if he wanted to interfere, would Yin Tianyu give him the chance to do so? He wanted to find out the truth himself. However, this was a story for another day. When Muyaja and Xiao Yichen reached home, the team of private doctors was already waiting for them at the door. The car door opened, and Muyaja carried Xiao Yichen out of the car. The doctors immediately greeted them respectfully. Mu Wanru and Mu Xing had also returned to the Mu residence. Seeing that Xiao Yichen was injured, Mu Xing turned pale with fright and immediately went forward to ask about his well-being. However, Xiao Yichen was not in the mood and did not want to say much. He only said, "I'm tired." He was then escorted back to his room for an injection and an 4 drip. Mu Wanru also asked about what had happened, but Muyaja returned to his study room and buried himself in the company's planning documents. She was at her wit's end. When she heard from the servants that Muyaja had brought Xiao Yichen to the amusement park, she felt a little suffocated. Late at night, Mu Wanru deliberately walked to the back garden and picked up the phone. A man's dejected voice came from the other end. "Miss Mu, I'm sorry. The mission failed." "What?" This was the first thing she received when she picked up the call. Mu Wanru gritted her teeth in exasperation but quickly suppressed her anger. "Where is he?" There was a few seconds of silence on the other end. Mu Wanru said irritably, "Damn it, are you all trash? You can't even handle a 6-year-old child? Sorry to disappoint you. Why are you on the phone with me? Where is he?" Mu Wanru asked coldly. There was another long period of silence on the other end. Suddenly, he said, "He's been caught." "What?" Mu Wanru cried out in shock. An inexplicable panic quickly spread in her heart. In a remote underground warehouse on the outskirts of Beijing. Li Hanlin unlocked the chains and Yin Tianyu followed closely behind him. Just as they stepped through the door, they vaguely heard a hoarse roar. "Ah!" Inside the warehouse, a man was chained to a wall pillar with his hands tied behind his back. His clothes were tattered, and there were many whip marks on them. He was trembling from the excruciating pain. His body was already riddled with scars and his face was covered in blood. It was hard to distinguish his facial features, but one could vaguely make out a pair of huge eyes that were staring in despair. The man in the suit raised the whip in his hand and continued to whip him. The man was in so much pain that he was barely breathing. He couldn't even make a complete and coherent sound. Chapter 475. Under such a brutal interrogation, the man's mouth was still sealed tightly, and he didn't spit out half a truth. Under the dim light, Yun Tianyu slowly walked to him and sized him up. Finally, he sat down on the chair Li Hanlin had brought over. He sat leisurely with his legs elegantly crossed. His thin body sank into the sofa leisurely. His delicate face was cold and indifferent. Even though he was still a child, no one could ignore the chilling aura emanating from his body. Between his brows, there was a sharp and intimidating aura. Although it was restrained, it could not hide the untamed edge as if it were born from darkness. The whipping continued. Without his command, no one would stop. At this moment, the warehouse was dark and filled with a murderous aura. Yin Tianyu lowered his eyelashes. His pair of beautiful yet cold eyes did not look at the man. He was still in his own world. However, no matter how tragically the man was being whipped, Yin Tianyu's brows remained calm and unmoved. Gradually, the man's voice stopped. Li Hanlin slowly walked to his side and whispered, "Director Yun, this man is not making any sound." Yin Tianyu calmly raised his eyes and looked at the unconscious man with cold eyes. He asked coldly, "Is he dead?" "No. He just fainted from the pain." "Oh." He calmly nodded his head. His thin lips curled into a treacherous and cold-blooded arc. "Wake him up." "Yes." Li Hanlin bowed and ordered his men to bring over a bucket of salt water. Moments later, the poor man, who had finally fainted, was splashed with a bucket of salt water. The pain woke him up again. The torture continued. Just kill me. Just kill me. Yun Tianyu turned a deaf ear to the man's pleas. It was as if what was happening before him had nothing to do with him. He did not even bother to look at the man. He did not say a word until the man fainted again. Li Hanlin walked to his side and was about to ask him when he heard Yun Tianyu say, "Put him on the floor." "Okay." Li Hanlin placed him on the ground. Yun Tianyu slowly got up and walked to the man. He kicked him with the tip of his foot. Seeing that the man had indeed fainted, he could not help but frown. "Why are you so stubborn? Looks like he's a professionally trained killer. He's very tight-lipped. I've interrogated him for so long and used so many methods, but I still couldn't pry his mouth open." Yun Tianyu glanced at the man's face and coldly said, "It's him." You injured my brother's hand because of you." Yun Tianyu's lips curled into a sinister smile. "You're not going to tell me, are you? All right, I'll play with him." With that, he ordered coldly, "Fix his limbs to the wall." "The wall, how do you fix it?" The men at the side were puzzled. The wall was bare and there was no fixed place. How could he tie her up? Giving him a sidelong glance, Yun Tianyu walked over and took out a sharp dagger from his waist. "Use this." Everyone shuddered. What he meant was to use the dagger to pin the man's limbs to the wall. What a ruthless method. It was truly creepy for a child to think of such a torturous method. Chapter 476. This abandoned warehouse was mostly abandoned, but the tools used for construction were still there. Very quickly, a hammer was brought over. A few men in suits helped the unconscious man up, stabilized him against the wall, spread out his limbs, aimed the nails at his wrists and ankles, and exerted force. A loud bang was heard. The man woke up again from the excruciating pain, but this time, his eyes were wide open. The bone-piercing pain in his limbs caused blood to gush out of his body. His face was so red that it looked like it was about to drip blood, and his veins were about to burst. Ah! If one did not experience this pain personally, they would never understand the cruelty of it. The man struggled in a frenzy, and his voice was almost hoarse from screaming. Yun Tianyu gave him a look, and Li Hanlin immediately ordered someone to pour a bucket of cold water on him. In an instant, the man calmed down a little. He raised his head in a sorry state, only to see a delicate-looking child standing in front of him. He coldly said, "I can tell you that you will die today." The man sneered. Die? What was there to be afraid of? When he accepted this assassination mission, he was already prepared to commit suicide if he failed. Yun Tianyu seemed to have guessed his resolve, so he coolly said, "You can either die a quick death or be played to death by me. Which one do you choose?" "Die a quick death." The man didn't even think about it as he gritted his teeth and said. Yun Tianyu smiled coldly. "All right, I can satisfy you. However, you have to tell me who ordered you to do this and who is your target." Humph, the man seemed to be mocking his naivety, as if he did not care about this child at all. He was a professionally trained assassin. Assassins accepted missions and received bounties. No matter what, they would never betray their employers. He only fell into their hands because of a miscalculation today. Seeing that he was stubborn and unwilling to reveal everything, Yun Tianyu took a piece of black cloth from Li Hanlin's hand and nonchalantly said, "Oh, okay. I'll play with you, then." His laughter was still childish and had a hint of a child's childishness. It was soft and cute. However, every sentence and every word that came out of his mouth made people tremble with fear. Gag his mouth. Li Hanlin immediately ordered someone to gag his mouth. He took a container from Li Hanlin. Inside the container were 10 finely crafted darts. He took out a dart and asked coldly, "Who ordered you to do this?" The man bit his lip hard and refused to say anything. Yun Tianyu smiled and threw the dart. He was good at darts. Because of his health, he rarely went out since he was young. When he was at home and had nothing to do, he liked to play some games. This dart was one of them. However, with his eyes blindfolded, it was hard to tell if the darts would be accurate. Chi! A muffled sound was heard. The dart went straight into the man's abdomen. The man groaned and tried to hold it in. However, in less than half a second, the expression on his face quickly cracked because of the indescribable pain. He suffocated for a moment, and his entire body convulsed. He was utterly defeated. These darts were no ordinary darts. The steel tip of the dart was stained with concentrated sulfuric acid. Chapter 477. Some of his wounds were already dripping with blood mixed with salt water. Yuntianyo's dart had accurately pierced a wound on his abdomen. The tip of the needle was short, so the wound was not deep enough to be fatal. However, the chemical reaction of the sulfuric acid and salt water corroded the wound, causing it to emit a wisp of smoke. Only he could experience this feeling now. When some kind of pain passed, perhaps even the scream stopped. Yun Tianyu furrowed his brows and asked regretfully, "Oh, my. Did I hit the target?" "Yes, you did," Li Hanlin reminded him. A cute and charming smile appeared on Yun Tianyo's face. With that, he received another dart. Yun Tianyu gestured, and the second dart was about to be thrown. "Woo woo. Woo woo. Don't." The man immediately begged for his assistant's help in a muffled voice. Yun Tianyu had just thrown a dart, yet the man was so scared that he wet his pants. It seemed that he was afraid. After all, this pain was not something an ordinary person could endure. Even if he was a seasoned killer who had lived his life on the edge of a knife, he was never afraid. Death? He was never afraid of death. Now, he was scared out of his wits by this 6-year-old child's means. What a joke, was this really a 6-year-old child? The man's eyelids trembled as he struggled to open them. His vision was blurred by the blood flowing from his forehead. He blinked his eyes hard and tried to regain his vision. Finally, he could see the child's face clearly. The child wasn't tall. He wore a snow-white shirt, black overalls, and a pair of British boots. His black hair was neat, and his skin was smooth and creamy. On his snow-white face, a pair of beautiful and deep eyes were covered, but one could vaguely see that the corners of his eyes were slightly curved, and he was smiling. He had a pretty nose, cute lips, and pink and tender cheeks. His body still had the smell of milk, and he was delicate and delicate. However, his body exuded a bone-chilling aura that made one's hair stand on end. Even though his lips were curled up and his face was clearly smiling, it made people feel a sinister feeling in their hearts and made them shudder. Was this child really only 6 years old? He did not believe it. Could a 6-year-old child think of such terrible means to torture someone? What is he saying? Yun Tianyu raised his eyebrows slightly. Li Hanlin gave him a look and immediately ordered someone to remove the cloth from his mouth. Once it was removed, the man begged for mercy. "Give me a quick death. Stop it. Don't. Do you think I'll stop just because you tell me to?" Yun Tianyu smiled innocently and tilted his head. His voice was tender, clear, and very pleasant to the ears. His words made one's heart shudder. The man's face turned white. "I'm just an assassin. I'm paid to do this, that's all. I'm just a child. I need someone to play with me. Why don't you play with me?" Yun Tianyu gave her an elegant smile. As he spoke, he raised his wrist again. The dart needle in his hand shone with a cold light. "Don't. I'll tell you. Don't. You'll confess?" Yun SSSS. "I'll tell you everything, I'll tell you everything. I only beg you to give me a quick death." Chapter 478. Yun Tianyo's lips curled into a sinister and disdainful smile. "Let me tell you, I may be able to find out even if you don't tell me. Now that you've provoked me, you'll have to bear the consequences." Just as he finished speaking, his eyes flashed with ruthlessness. With a swift wave of his hand, he threw the dart in his hand and it pierced the man's thigh. The sulfuric acid on the tip of the needle quickly corroded the man's skin to the point where his bones were visible. The man convulsed violently as if he had been electrocuted. He struggled madly. Swish. Another dart was thrown, and it accurately pierced his eye. Puff. Warm blood splattered out. A fiery and intense glaring sensation hit him. This time, the man was completely unable to make a sound. He only convulsed like he was having a spasm. Then, he let out a heart-wrenching scream. Ah! Ah! Li Hanlon, who was standing at the side, also found this scene to be extremely horrifying. He lowered his head to look at Yun Tianyu and asked with a complicated expression, "Director Yun, why don't you let your daddy settle this matter?" "Agent Li, what do you mean by that?" Yun Tianyu slowly retorted. "This is my matter, he doesn't need to settle it. But, this will dirty your hands." Li Hanlon could not help feeling a little hurt. A 6-year-old child should be pure white, shouldn't he? He should not be tainted by such things, should he? Yun Tianyu's gaze was slightly distracted. "Dirty? Heh." He sneered. His laughter was light but deep. "In order to protect mommy, even if my hands are stained with blood, I won't hesitate." Li Hanlon was so shocked that he could not recover his senses for a long time. This sentence was bold enough. At this moment, Li Hanlon was truly impressed by him from the bottom of his heart. He did not know what kind of childhood had nurtured such a calm, courageous, and black-bellied child. On one side, he was innocent and adorable, on the other, he was dark and ruthless. He did not have the weakness and delicateness that a child should have. A normal child would be scared out of his wits if something like this happened, but he quickly regained his composure and even personally interrogated the assassin, torturing him until he begged for death. How did such a black-bellied method come about? He was very much like his father. That Muyaja was also a ruthless person. Could it really be hereditary? Yun Tianyu elegantly removed the black cloth covering his eyes. With great satisfaction, he took a few steps toward the man, who was in so much pain that he wished he was dead. "Does it hurt?" Cough, cough, blood gushed up, and the man coughed out a mouthful of blood. He could no longer reply. That's right. The more he hurt. The more satisfied Yun Tianyu was, the more satisfied he became. He thought of his mother's worried face. Then, he thought about how Mui Chen had been injured in order to protect him. This pain was nothing. These 3 darts were neither too much nor too little. On behalf of Mommy and Mui Chen, they were returning them to him. "You can say it now." The man trembled as he raised his head and looked at him with misty eyes. Perhaps he was in so much pain that his mind was muddled. His lips didn't move for a long time. The scariest thing for a person was to greet death helplessly. What was scarier than this was to suffer a fate worse than death. He had been in the dark for so many years, and it was not that he had never seen people with ruthless means. In terms of ruthlessness, he had never been convinced by anyone. Yun Tianyu, however, was the first person to make him feel fear from the bottom of his heart. How was this a child? Chapter 479. On the surface, he looked as innocent as an angel. In reality, he was scarier than the devil. Not going to speak. The boy frowned, dissatisfied with his indifference. With both hands in his pants, he kicked the man's abdomen, causing the latter to yelp in pain. "Are you mute now?" "I don't have the patience." "This is your last chance, don't waste my time." I'll speak, good boy." With his hands behind his back, he looked like an elegant and courteous gentleman as he casually asked, "Who exactly is your target?" 3 days ago, I received this mission. My employer paid me 2 million to assassinate 2 people. Which 2? One, Yun Xianxia. The other, her son, Yun Tianyu, who is, he raised his head and stared at him with one eye. "You." The boy's eyes changed slightly. Even though his face remained expressionless, his heart was in turmoil. He had previously guessed that he was the target and also vaguely guessed that his mother was one of the targets. Yun Tianyu clenched his fists tightly as a frightening and sharp murderous look flashed across his adorable face. Someone actually dared to hire an assassin to assassinate his mother? D***. If not for luck, his mother's life would have been in danger that day. Thinking of this, his eyes flashed dangerously with murderous intent. Who's your employer? He. Ha ha ha. The man guffawed. I'm an assassin hired by someone. She pays me, and I carry out her orders. It's that simple. As for my employer's identity, I shouldn't reveal it. Still, I have to give it to you. I only ask that you give me a quick death and stop torturing me. All right. I agree to this condition of yours. Like a great gift, Yun Tianyu agreed to his request. Tell me, who is that person? The man's lips trembled as he answered, Mu Wanru. Mu Wanru? His brows furrowed slightly, clearly unfamiliar with this name. Li Hanlin was stunned for a moment before asking in surprise, why is it her? You know her? He raised his head and narrowed his eyes dangerously. Yes. I'll explain her identity to you in detail, Li Hanlin said. He turned to look at the man and asked coldly, why does she want to kill me? Of course, she didn't tell me the specific reason. I only know that she said that you are an evil creature and must be eliminated. Otherwise, it will threaten her position. The man endured the pain and opened his mouth with difficulty. Have no choice but to get rid of them? Yun Tianyu quickly sensed that there was a hidden meaning in her words. The man coughed a few times, a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. He slowly said, 6 years ago, Yun Xianxia gave birth to 2 children for the Mu family. One of the children was confirmed to have died at birth. Therefore, everyone thought that the child no longer existed in this world. However, Grandpa Mu somehow got the news that the child was still alive. Naturally, he would want the child to return to the family. Yun Tianyu narrowed his eyes. He suddenly approached the man and interrogated, what else do you know? Tell me everything. Chapter 480. He was an assassin. After accepting a mission, he would investigate the identity of the employer to the best of his ability. His information on Mu Wanru was limited, though. This was all he knew. Yun Tianyu blinked his eyes slowly and his lips curled into a strange smile. Rest in peace. After saying that, he turned around without looking back and elegantly walked out of the warehouse. The moment the door closed, a gunshot was heard, breaking the tranquil night. When Li Hanlin came out, Yun Tianyu was sitting in the car, deep in thought. Have you dealt with everything? Li Hanlin nodded. Yes. Let's go. In the car, Yun Tianyu sat leisurely in the back seat. He rested his chin elegantly on one hand and looked out the window indifferently. Li Hanlin, who was sitting beside him, gave him a rough analysis of Mu Wanru's information. However, due to the limited information he could not deduce Mu Wanru's motive for hiring an assassin. Yun Tianyu only said, it's not that simple. You have 5 days to investigate everything about Mu Wanru, no matter how big or small. Understood, Li Hanlin replied swiftly. At the same time, in the Mu residence. In the study room, Mu Yaja sat at his desk and flipped through a thick stack of documents with his head lowered. Min Yu, who was behind him, quietly waited and carefully observed his expression. That's all? Sir, all the information on Leji Holdings is here. Mu Yaja raised his eyes and furrowed his brows slightly. Since Xiao Yichen was injured, he naturally wanted to find out what had happened at the amusement park. However, due to the shooting incident, Fairy Tale Valley closed 3 hours in advance and evacuated all the visitors. They showed a perfect public relations attitude toward the media's interception of interviews, but they refused to talk about what had happened that day, even in the face of the public's doubts. The shooting incident was definitely a fatal blow to a public amusement park like the amusement park. Under normal circumstances, the media and the police would have already investigated this matter. But until now, the news about the shooting incident had been tightly sealed. Even the media could not intervene, so there were no reports. On the internet, some visitors posted on the forum. However, not long after these posts were posted, they were quickly deleted. Their accounts were also banned or even banned. Minyu investigated in secret, but due to Fairy Tale Valley's strict confidentiality measures, he didn't leak any information. He only vaguely found out that there was an attack on that day. As for the details of the incident, he did not know. Fairy Tale Valley was jointly controlled by Leji Holdings and N.E. Group. This N.E. Group didn't have a strong background, but Cola Wisdom had a strong background. Leji Holdings used to be a toy supplier on the verge of bankruptcy until it was acquired by Hurricane Group a year ago. The board of directors was replaced, shares were divided, and the CEO was replaced. In a short period of time, they had rapidly risen to become the world-class DreamWorks Animation, the world's largest toy supplier. Their industrial chains were spread across North America, Europe, and Asia. However, the CEO who held 60% of the company's shares had a mysterious background. A toy supplier might not be surprising. However, the Hurricane Group behind them was not to be trifled with. Chapter 481. They controlled half of the world's arms market and had close ties with various governments, mafia, and terrorist organizations. Their influence spanned across both the legal and illegal worlds, and they had an impressive mercenary corps. Perhaps, this was not an intuitive feeling. In other words, Hurricane Group controlled 50% of the world's arms market. Out of every 100 guns in the world, 50 of them were produced by this group. Every war in the world required the signing of tens of billions worth of arms orders from the Hurricane Group's armory. It could be said that this arms group was so powerful that everyone feared it. Dishing Financial Group was powerful, but its business was huge. The Muse did not rely solely on clean means to reach where they were today. The power struggles behind them were intertwined. At a certain point, if they wanted to expand their influence, they would naturally involve the underworld. There were two big families in the capital. One of them was the Gu family, and the other, needless to say, was the Mu family. This Hurricane Group was not just a simple underworld organization, though. Every move of theirs could affect the world situation. How could a toy company have a connection with such a huge arms group, though? I heard that the mysterious CEO of Leji Holdings is very young. After Hurricane Group acquired the company, he took over the board of directors. I feel that his background is not simple. He should be related to Hurricane Group in countless ways. Minyu said from the side. Wuxia frowned as he fiddled with the pen in his hand. Minyu, who was standing at the side, said with lingering fear, if word of the shooting incident at the amusement park gets out, Leji's reputation will surely suffer a devastating blow. Now that the news is sealed, even the police can't intervene. A toy company can't possibly have such power. Wuxia casually flipped through the documents. His gaze paused on a column of information. Leji Holdings Board of Directors, Li Hanlin. His gaze changed as the man's face flashed across his mind. This man had once appeared in Yuntianyo's ward and claimed to be the principal of Yuntianyo's kindergarten. He had also met him at Fairy Tale Valley that day. He was one of the higher-ups there. Back then, he was in a hurry and did not react in time. Now that he thought about it, he suddenly felt that something was amiss. Since he was one of the higher-ups in Leji Holdings, then, Wuxia's gaze deepened. Who is this Li Hanlin? He is the highest-ranking director of Leji Holdings. He has a lot of power. Wuxia's heart skipped a beat as a suspicion suddenly arose in his heart. Even he couldn't help but be startled. He had some bold guesses about Yuntianyo's identity. By the time Yuntianyu reached home, the sky was already turning bright. It was close to dawn. He tiptoed around the entrance and carefully walked into the living room. Suddenly, the lights in the living room lit up. He was startled and stood rooted to the ground. Where did you go? On the sofa, Xianxia looked at him angrily, as if she hadn't slept all night. Her face was tired, and her eyes were bloodshot. Chapter 482. Waiting for you. Xianxia's voice was frosty. His coquetry seemed to have lost its effect at this moment. She asked angrily, where did you go? I went for a walk in the courtyard. Yuntianyu pinched the corner of his shirt uneasily. Like a child who had done something wrong, he was at a loss for what to do and trembled with fear. In fact, he had indeed done something wrong. Xianxia coldly said, I went to the courtyard to look for you, but I couldn't find you. You, why did you lie to Mommy? Mommy. He was startled. He did not know when she realized that he was not around, nor did he know how long she had been waiting for him. When he left the house, he was very careful not to make any noise. He only left the house after ensuring that Xianxia was asleep. How, when did she find out? Xianxia stared at him unblinkingly. Her face was filled with anger and sadness. Not long after he left, she woke up with a start. She got up and went to his room to check if he was sleeping well, but when she turned on the light, the person on the bed was gone. She was scared out of her wits, but she did not dare to alarm Yunyechen. She searched everywhere by herself and even went to the security room to check the surveillance footage. Only then did she realize that he had gotten into a car and left. Seeing that he got into the car casually without being dragged or struggling, she ruled out the possibility of him being kidnapped. She also noted down the car plate number, but since it was late at night, she thought that, given Yu Yu's character, he might be afraid that she would be worried and would return before dawn. Thus, she waited patiently in the living room. Yun Tianyu looked at her guiltily. Seeing her haggard and uneasy face, he nervously explained, Mommy, don't worry. Yu Yu didn't do anything bad. Yu Yu is just. He could not think of a reasonable explanation no matter how hard he thought about it. It was impossible for him to tell her the truth, too. He didn't even dare to confess his current identity to his mother. How could he dare to talk about what happened tonight? Yu Yu, do you know that Mommy is worried about you? Xianxia saw that he couldn't speak and knew that he wouldn't tell her the truth. She crouched down and put her arms around his shoulders. She was still traumatized by the attack at the amusement park. She was really afraid that something would happen to Yu Yu again. Mommy, Yu Yu made you worry. But Yu Yu swears to you that Yu Yu will never do anything to hurt Mommy. Mommy, don't worry. Trust in Yu Yu, okay? If he was given a little more time, he would definitely find a chance to clear things up with her. But now, he couldn't. Xianxia looked at him. Is that a promise? Yes. It's a deal. Today is the last time, there won't be a next time. Yun Tianyu hugged Xianxia's face and gave her a peck as he consoled her. Mommy, Yu Yu wants to keep what happened today a secret, I can't tell you. When the time is right, Yu Yu will come clean with Mommy. Mommy, give Yu Yu some time, okay? Xianxia was tickled by Yun Tianyu's serious expression. How could he still say that the time was right? All right. Mommy is relieved to see that you are safe and sound. But today is the last time, there won't be a next time. Xianxia warned him unhappily. Chapter 483. After all, Yu Yu was different from other children, he had his own way of thinking. Hence, she carried Yu Yu into the bedroom. As usual, Xianxia lay on the bed and read him a fairy tale. Yun Tianyu snuggled softly in her arms and fell asleep peacefully as he listened to her gentle voice. Xianxia specially applied for leave to accompany Yu Yu for a few days. She also brought him and Yun Yecheng on a vacation for a few days. It was peaceful for a few days. When she returned to the training class, Qin Zhou informed her that she could successfully graduate early due to the movie schedule. The morning passed peacefully. It was not until noon that an uninvited guest arrived. It was Qian Xiaohua, whom she had met at the restaurant some time ago. In the office, Xianxia saw him and subconsciously wanted to leave. Qian Xiaohua was not going to let her off so easily. He hurriedly blocked her way at the door with a pleading look on his face. Miss Yun, please don't misunderstand. I'm not here to have any improper thoughts about you. It's just that I need your help with something. You have to help me. Xianxia did not let down her guard as she eyed him warily. He knew that he must have left a bad impression on her previously, so he bowed deeply to apologize. Miss Yun, please forgive me for my rudeness and offense last time. I know that I'm in the wrong. I hope that you won't stoop to my level and won't stoop to my level. I'm very regretful after the incident. I'm a pervert, Anyway, I can only apologize to you for what happened last time. Also, I'll try my best to make it up to you. However, there's something that I need your help with. I don't understand what you mean. Before that, can I ask for your forgiveness? Xianxia raised his head and looked at her with a face full of remorse. It looked like he was truly remorseful. Last time, she was still so arrogant. Why did she lower her head and beg for forgiveness this time? However, Xianxia didn't intend to argue with this kind of person, so she said, "Let bygones be bygones. I forgive you." "Thank you," Xianxia said gratefully. Then, he told her the whole story. It turned out that some time ago, Xianxia had taken a fancy to a piece of land in the new district, so he bought it and planned to develop it into a high-class apartment building. The investments and whatnot had already been settled. The reason he chose that place was because of Disheng. Not long ago, the real estate company under Disheng Financial Group had bought a large piece of land in the new district. Xianxia had secretly asked around and found out that this piece of land was going to be a development project. He had heard that Wuxia was going to develop the new district into an economic district. Not only would he set up a new branch there, but he would also vigorously develop a green ecological garden. After that, he would cooperate with a famous tourism holding company in the capital to build a 5A-grade amusement park. Upon hearing about Disheng Financial Group's move, many companies were tempted. The land in the new district started to be auctioned at high prices. Therefore, the remaining land was quickly divided up, and the price of the land continued to soar.